Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Gran Touring Series Racing League Season 38, Round 1. I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and we are back at the Nürburgring GP circuit for the third time of asking this week for EU Division 3. Now, after the disaster of last night's EU Division 2, where unfortunately we weren't able to get underway with any racing, but there was some great joy in chat and some good jokes all round. A bit of frustration for our drivers, of course, and our race stewards, but it's one of the limitations we have, and sometimes things don't work out the way we go. Just want to round that off by saying that tomorrow night will be the rescheduled EU Division 2 Round 1 races. Unfortunately, I will not be able to broadcast those. We are currently in the process of trying to source somebody to broadcast those to you and bring it live to you. We're still working on that. We'll get a final notification on that as soon as we possibly can. But, moving away from our middle league and coming on to some positives, let's come back to EU Division 3 then. And, well, what kind of show have we got on today? Well, Division 3, it's quite rare at first that we normally get a Division 3 in the recent seasons, but every so often we do seem to get a Division 3 within the European Union, and indeed within that catchment area, Division 3s are becoming more and more regular. What with the fact that we are growing as a brand at the GTSRL community and we're getting more and more people signing up for the seasons. We were quite close to getting a Division 3 last time out season 37, missing out by only a couple of people, but I'm pleased to say we do have a third division, so it means that we're going to have some of the lower division guys here who should not be underestimated, but some of them may be finding their feet within the GT Sport community, and what a brilliant place to start planting their feet at the Nürburgring GP circuit. So without further ado then, as we say hello to Pingo Phone in the chat, and if you are tuning in right now and you are able to access the Twitch chat, be sure to say hello. I wish you all very well. The fact that we are now halfway through the week, over the halfway point. We've only got one more day in a lot of countries in terms of working days before we have the 4-day Easter weekend. Let me know what you're looking forward to on that 4-day Easter weekend, if you've got it, or just the weekend in general. And, well, I hope you're all doing well and that you've had a fantastic day. Everybody deserves to have a smile on their face, no matter what the scenario or the situation. Let's be bright and positive. And talk about bright and positive, and let's get introducing our 12 drivers tonight. I'm expecting a full pack of 12 drivers. We are indeed, and fingers crossed they are all able to make it and nobody gets stuck on the way to the circuit, alternatively has any technical glitches. So we're going to start off introducing team number 1. We're going to start from top to bottom in terms of our drivers based on their respective teams. And we begin then with a Dutchman. You all know him as Jerry R. Driver. He's making another appearance this evening, and indeed in season 38. Typically seen in the lower division in the seasons he's participated in. But Jerry R. Driver, being one of those drivers who, whilst he may not be the fastest, definitely loves having a good crack at GTSRL races. And, well, he's been looking forward to the GT3 season 38 for some time. Now remember, of course, this is not just a Group 3 season, but we've also got tuning active. Jerry found that in the time trial with the Ferrari 458 at Suzuka, the Italia GT3 variant of the Ferrari 458, of course, that things were a bit difficult and things did not necessarily go his way. And so really he's been looking to try and show off some of his pace in the races, starting with tonight. He's the number 27 driver, and he is joined by the number 3 driver and a newcomer to the GTSRL community, and that is Zurnai's Male, or we're going to be calling him Male from this point onwards. That's not his gender or assumed gender, it is his username or the end of it. The Turkish driver, a newcomer to GTSRL, running out in the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1, continuing the trend of us seeing a predominant field of Aston Martins up and down the divisions, but we do have quite a mix of cars here tonight as well, so we shouldn't be ashamed to say it and see it. Smale, or Male as we're referring to him, a newcomer here and looking to do his utmost today. Been very excited coming into tonight's race. He's been very eager to know when they're going to take place and has really just been waiting to kick things off. And we wish him all the best on his debut tonight. And as we look around, we just hear from Race Control that more drivers are returning, and we say hello to Zoroniki in the chat, who is asking us whether we're watching a racing or a lobby maker simulator. And well, fingers crossed it's not going to be lobby making simulator tonight. We've got all of our fingers crossed. I've got my toes crossed. I've also done everything I can to wish us all the best of luck. But anyway, enough of worrying about whether the lobby is going to work or not. We now move on to team number 2. Now, team number 2 consists of a gentleman who many of you will know quite well. It is Insubordinate 73, or Insubordinate as we're going to refer to him, bringing the Mazda Atenza to the field, a car which we did see yesterday, albeit that was in the hands of Not Nats, the British driver, where here we've got it in the hands of an American racing under the German flag. Now, Insubordinate was in EU Division 2 in Season 37 and did quite a good job across the rounds in Season 37, albeit perhaps the results weren't always quite there, but he was one of the drivers who should have been underestimated because he did pull home a very good set of results. The number 369 driver making his way out the final corner onto the start-finish straight to do another flying lap in this practice session. Now, Insubordinate is looking forward to tonight, as a lot of our drivers are, and has been really hyped up for the GT3 season here, so we wish him all the best. His teammate, Remwesh, or Wesh as we're going to be referring to them from this point forward, is currently not at the circuit, but Wesh is a newcomer, as I understand it, to the GTSRL community, and when he does arrive, we'll be sure to introduce him. We'll have plenty of time for that. Now, as we hop around, we come on to team number 3, and one very particular individual who leads team number 3. That is Vitor Knight, the Portuguese driver who many of you will know. He arrived back in what was, I believe, season 35, back when we switched over to the not the LMP1 cars, I should say the Group C cars for the 2020 finale season, and Vitor Knight was one of the drivers there, with an influx of drivers from the Portuguese GT Sport community, and Vitor was one of the prominent ones who made his mark, and he finds himself in EU Division 3 this season after having a very difficult time trial session. He wasn't happy with how things turned out in the end, but he's already setting our timing screens alight with the fastest lap in this final practice session, and bringing that Aston Martin DBR9 GT1 tonight, we look forward to seeing what he can do. He is joined by the Polish driver of Luke 666111, who we're going to be referred to as Luke from this point onwards, running around there in the green Porsche 911 RSR. Lovely livery by looks of things on that car, and indeed, to go to boot, a lovely driver from what I'm hearing down at the paddock, a very friendly driver, and somebody who is looking forward to the racing tonight and looking to do what he can in the Porsche, which is a very different pick from what we've seen typically across EU Divisions 1 and 2, and so far in EU Division 3. And I think this car could be a little bit of a spanner in the works for some other drivers, because whilst it won't be the fastest down the straights unless it's been tuned accordingly, it will be very strong in the corners, particularly when we look at sectors 3 and 4, where you've got those medium speed apex corners where this Porsche will work very well with its mid-engine rear wheel drive drivetrain. Now we hop away from the Polish driver here, who we wish the best of luck, of course, and we move on to team number 4. And by the looks of things, both drivers from team number 4 have just turned up at the paddock, so that is perfect timing. We would like them to get out on the circuit though, so that way we can show them off to you. But we're going to hop away from team 4 briefly. We'll come back to the second. Instead, let's talk a little bit about team number 5, and one driver to start with, the British driver of Spinky Biltong. We're going to be referring to him as Spinky from this point onwards, bringing out the Time Attack liveried Subaru WRX Group 3 car. A lovely livery on a lovely car. And Spinky did mention this last night in the Twitch chat for EU Division 2 that he would be bringing the Subaru to tonight's race, or set of races I should say, and we will look forward to seeing what he's able to achieve. Hopefully he doesn't put it into the inside wall coming out of turn 4-5 in the race. Perhaps get that out of the way in practice and then make sure that mistake doesn't happen in qualifying or the race. But we wish him the best of luck, and Spinky, a very friendly driver, a lovable character down at the paddock, and everybody loves his company out on the circuit, and we look forward to seeing what he can do. He is joined in his team number 5, by the Egyptian racing under the Saudi Arabian flag of Tamer 2010, who we'll refer to as Tamer from this point onwards. Now, going into this season, coming off the back of his introductory season in season 37, Tamer was the slowest driver overall in the standings in season 37, but it hasn't let him daunt him. He's doing his best, he's been putting in the time in practice, he's been asking the drivers up and down the paddock, what's good times, how can I tune the car better, and he's picked the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1, which is the preferred car for the tuner drivers here, and he's looking to try and get his utmost and look to secure some solid points tonight. I think he'll be doing his utmost to make sure he gets top 10 finishes, just a couple of places beyond last place, and that'll put him in good stead. We wish him all the best, of course, and that's what it's all about at GTSRL, whether you're fast or slow, giving it your best and having fun, and Tamer, we're sure, will be doing that tonight. We're then going to come back to team number 4 then, so we're going to introduce team number 4, starting off with their lead driver, the British driver of Vox Bacchus, who we're going to be referred to as Bacchus from this point onwards, running in the Welsh flag liveried Porsche 911 RSR, so I get the feeling that Bacchus is a Welsh driver here, lovely livery on the car as well, and well, what can we say about Bacchus? Well, lovely livery, lovely car, and by the sounds of things, he's going to have a lovely time tonight, or at least we're going to assume that. It could be 3 out of 3 in that conundrum there. And Bacchus being relatively fresh on the scene by comparison with recent seasons. We haven't seen him race, so he's going to be a little bit of an unknown, and let's look forward to seeing what he's able to achieve. He is joined by his fellow countryman of Jenkster, the one whose username we butchered a number of times in season 37, but we've had that fixed for us as of season 37. Jenkster not currently out of the circuit, but a fellow Welshman who will be out on track in due course, as we hear that Ren Wesh has arrived down at the paddock. He's just pulling in now and we'll be getting the car out on the circuit shortly. So whilst we're waiting, let's introduce team number 6 then, starting off with the United Kingdom driver of TLR's The Lone Racer, who we'll be referring to as The Lone Racer from this point onwards. Running out in the Dodge Viper, a very different pick compared to what we've seen. The Dodge Viper being a car renowned for its abilities previously on the straights until the recent balance of performance changes which saw the Viper's straight line speed hit quite hard, but still it's a rather comfortable car to drive and one of the most stable cars within Group 3, and I think that's what Racer is going to be looking to utilise and capitalise on and use the tuning to make up for the straight line speed deficit, or at least in the acceleration department. But Lone Racer, a newcomer on the GTSRL scene, one of multiple newcomers to GTSRL as of season 38, and we wish him all the best on his debut tonight. He is joined by another newcomer, so Team 6 being the pair of newcomers, and that is the fellow compatriot British driver of Hideless Seedies, or we're going to be referring to him as Seedies from this point onwards, unless somebody informs me to pronounce the second part of his username differently in the chat. Running out in the Peugeot RCZ, a very, very odd pick of a car, I should say, but not one to be underestimated. It has been a bit of a meme-mobile within Group 3, according to the GT Sport FI community, in the top splits in particular, for a good number of years, in the fact that it's a rather odd-looking car and it has some rather odd performance. It is quite an oversteery car, and we'll come more into this in a bit, but at the same time it does well on its tyres. It just seems to really lack on the straight, and also its gearing can be a little bit iffy, but with tuning you can fix that, of course. That's our 6th team introduced, and we have one more driver who we should reintroduce when they finally get on circuit, and that is Jenkster. And here is the Welshman in particular, running out in the Porsche 911 RSR, as well as his teammate then, so Light Bacchus running out in the 911, and Jenkster making his debut back in last season. If not the season before that, it's either 36 or 37, my mind's going a little bit cloudy, but a very fast driver within the lower divisions, albeit he has been in those lower divisions, typically EU Division 2, but then one not to be underestimated, and he'll be looking to do his best tonight to make a stamp in terms of his place in EU Division 3, and indeed show himself off to the veteran drivers of the division and also the newer drivers, put one over on them. Now, the only driver who we have not introduced yet, and I believe that is because we are waiting for him to get out on the circuit, is Ren Wesh, or Wesh as we're going to say his name in short, and we will confirm when he arrives out on trackside and we'll show you what he's driving tonight. But in the meantime, we're just going to patiently wait and talk a little bit more about tonight's proceedings, as we say hello to Driving Dutchman in the chat, and once again Jerry, racecar driver, who is racing tonight, but he's also currently in the Twitch chat, probably just calling off a little bit before he gets out there. We wish them the best of luck, of course, and well, we say hello to Driving Dutchman and check on how these guys are doing as well. Hope you guys are doing well, and also Luco33 in the chat. Good to see you once again, Luco, and I hope you're having a good day. And we're just checking our race briefing notes, and we have been informed that we are waiting for a number of drivers to get into the voice chat. So what it is, we have got our official race steward tonight at trackside. That is Pies1123, the veteran of GTSRL Pies. He's been around longer than time and space from what I gather, although don't quote me on that. But he's been around for a very long time, Pies, in the GTSRL community, one of the old hats, and he is our race director and race side steward today, just getting things set up right now and making sure everybody's able to hear him over voice comms in the GTSRL Discord, which of course we will not be hearing from over the course of tonight's racing. He'll be sending me notes through Discord in terms of what's happening and if there's any issues. And as we continue to look around, we have still not got Wesh out on circuit, so we are waiting for Wesh to put his car out on the track. In the meantime, we are still waiting. Let's talk a little bit then about tonight's proceedings. So, in 15 minutes time, we are expecting to get underway with qualification, a 12-minute session to get yourself in pole, of course, and then we'll kick off race number 1, being the 5-lap race, and wherever you finish in race number 1 will determine your starting position in race number 2. So if you finish in first place in race number 1, you start on pole for race 2. And then the same format follows into race number 3, with race 2 being a 5 5-lap race as well. If you win race 2, you'll start on pole for race 3. But of course the difference with race 3 is that it's the longer strategic race rather than a sprint race, where you've got 10 laps, so double the distance, and tyre wear starts to become a potential factor. You have to pit, but do you go for a fresh set of tyres when you go into the pits? We are waiting in the meantime though for just a couple of people to get themselves sorted out in the Discord. Some newcomers here not used to using Discord as a point of call for voice communications, completely understandable. Indeed, in the pandemic and lockdown, I think a lot of us had to get used to voice over the internet services such as Microsoft Teams, Discord, Skype, etc. It has been a very odd time for technology over the last 2 years. We will be getting some stuck checks underway in the very near future, of course. And Jerry Racecar Driver's already got himself a beer. I wonder if it's a Heineken, because we have got a few Heineken sponsored liveries here, particularly on the Welsh Drivers liveries here. Not saying that I'm suggesting that you should drink Heineken or anything along those lines, as I believe this guy standing to my right hand side passes me a £5 note for saying Heineken multiple times. Don't drink Heineken, folks. I'm not suggesting you should at all. But sarcasm and joking aside, and peer pressure from the advertisers and sponsors, we will be doing some stock checks shortly, but whilst we are waiting, let's talk a little bit about the cars, particularly the newer cars which we haven't seen before. So the Dodge Viper has been brought out by Lone Racer. As I said earlier, it was nerfed quite heavily as a recent balance performance update, where it had a good chunk of its straight line speed taken away. But the thing about the Dodge Viper is it is a very stable car, albeit Lone Racer decides to go a little bit onto the grass there on entry into 6, so it makes it look a little bit less stable. But you notice how quickly he could catch the car and get it back together. And that's one of the things that's very forgiving about the Viper. If you make a mistake, you can quickly recover from that mistake and get yourself set to go again. The problem with the car, however, and something that would have to be tuned out from it, is that it suffers from an inherent amount of understeer. And that's something which, if Lone Racer hasn't altered the car to try and knock that out, particularly tried to raise the rear end of the car, so raise the ride height at the rear high and put the front down low, then he may be having some difficulty as we get our first start check underway. But it'll be interesting to see what the Viper can do. It should be relatively strong around here with the right setup. So as we come down to the grid then, for the purposes of this start check, it'll be the two Aston Martin DBR9s on pole, or on the front row I should say, of Vitor Knight and Mail, where we've got the Portuguese just ahead of the Turkish driver. We're actually going to refer to him as Smail to make it a little bit easier and not get any gender confusion in here. And as the lights go on, the 5 red lights, it's lights out and away we go for the first start check of the evening, and by the looks of things, everybody's been able to successfully pull away. A lot of drivers being caught out, however, by the launch with cold tyres and also potentially traction control off. And this, of course, is a brilliant opportunity for a lot of drivers to get used to the run down to turn 1 and the heavy braking into turn 1 on cold tyres, as we see Insubordinate being sent wide and spinning there by Luca. Sorry, by Luke, I should say, as he's coming out of turn 1. I think Luke just put himself down the inside door panel there of Insubordinate and spun him round. Albeit our drivers do not have to wait for each other in this one, or are not expected to wait for one another, because of the fact this is purely a stuck check race. As Spinky Bouton spins out, coming out of turn 4-5 there, but gets it flipped around the right way. And actually, it's at this point that we should take a look back at Renwesh and notice that he is using, the British driver here, is using the Ferrari 458 Italia GT3. So somebody has gone for mid-engine rear-wheel drive alongside also CDs, and well, CDs brings the Peugeot RCZ, but Renwesh is going for the one-lap car. The Ferrari 458 is known within the FIA community as the car that's one of the fastest over a single lap, but it butchers its tyres and becomes incredibly unstable on the worn tyres. So Renwesh is going to be one to look out for definite, as they all make their way up through the Schumacher S towards turn number 11. And we can see that Zanai Ismail is leading, and in fact I can say his name correctly now, figured out how to pronounce it. So the Turkish driver leading through 12 down to 13, 14, 15, and behind him Vitor Knight chasing after him. Now, of course, some drivers might be sandbagging a little bit here, just simply using this more as a warm-up rather than a worry about whether they need to push hard. But, of course, if you're using this as a warm-up rather than showing any of your pace off, it can work out, but you don't want to go too light, because otherwise you may find yourself going a bit lighter in qualifying. as CDs comes up towards the chicane just behind Renwish and getting a good run out of the chicane. I think he won't have the time to go for a move by the end of the Stuck Check race, but the win will go to Zanaismail ahead of Vitor Knight and Jerry R Driver drag racing along to third place. Vox Bacchus and Jinkster bringing it home for the team in fourth and fifth place together. The Welsh teammates there doing a very nice job of putting themselves into the top 5 ahead of Renwish. CDs in P7, Tamir in P8, Spinky Biltong in P9, Lone Racer coming across the line in P10, and then it will be Insubordinate, who's just making his way up to the final corner. I think a little bit irritated by the fact he got spun out so early on in the Stuck Check race. Whilst it is a Stuck Check race, it was one concern, although he has pointed out something as well that he did not have traction control, and that did, I think he's admitting fault perhaps to the fact he caused a number of cars to have to evade his car, which was spinning on the grid. As Luke completes our race order there, and congratulations to Zanaismail for winning Stuck Check race number 1. But everybody bringing their respective cars home. We had nobody stuck. We had some faults, but it was drivers making errors rather than an actual error with the lobby. So we're looking really good right now. We're probably going to do one more Stuck Check race very shortly. But if the next one proceeds as planned, I think we could be on for some racing tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I think the issues of last night have gone away. The sun is out. What, with it being 8 o'clock local time in Germany right now, even though where I'm sat in the United Kingdom, it's 8 o'clock in the evening almost. Yeah, time dilation is a weird thing. Global warming probably caused it. But we're looking forward to some good racing. As we say hello to Gomez1988 in the chat, the Portuguese driver who unfortunately wasn't able to race last night as part of EU Division 2, what of all the thoughts. But hope you're doing well, Gomez, and we've got plenty of entertainment. I'm sure you're here to support Vitor Knight, given the fact he's your fellow countryman. All of our drivers really getting themselves now into the swing of things, and also a lot of individuals pointing out, you know what, it was a Stuck Check, don't worry about turn 1, but just make sure you're aware of the fact that in the race, if you do decide to absolutely send yourself down the side of me into turn 1 and push me wide, well, I'm not going to be a happy bunny. I'm not going to call out names, but there's a lot of conversation down in the paddock right now where drivers are just simply saying, you know what, let's take it a little bit easy, because you can see the front of Luke's Porsche 911. It looks as though it's been through a demolition derby. It's been through some sort of wreckfest. But nonetheless, still looking nice, and I must say that is a really fetching green and black combination on that car. I am envious. That is a really nice looking car there. As Vitor Knight follows him into the turn 8 hairpin here, and you can see Vitor running with traction control. They're probably just using it to help settle the rear end of the Aston Martin. He's probably gone for one of the more loose rear end tunes, but he needs the traction control to get the car settled on exit as he plants the throttle, because otherwise he may achieve some rather heavy snap oversteer, which when the rear end of that Aston Martin goes, or indeed any of these GT3 machines, when the rear end goes, it is good night, Mildred. But nonetheless, as we see Spilky Biltong making his way up towards turn 11. Nicely planted there through turn 11 and into 12. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Subaru WRX. We did talk about it last night, but let's do a quick recap. The thing about the Subaru is it doesn't have the most powerful engine. It's got one of the weaker engines within the Group 3 category in GT Sport. But where it has the weaker engine, it does have a turbo, quite a strong turbo to try and make up for it. But it's also very planted on the brakes, although Spinky Biltong gets on the power a little bit too soon there and gets it all sorts of wrong coming out of turn 15. They're coming out of the chicane. But the thing about WRX is it's typically very stable on corner exit, and it means that you can attack the exit of corners much more confidently than a good number of other cars. In a way, it's much like the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo Final Edition within the Group 3 category. It's one of those cars where all your time is made or lost in the corners. On the straights, you're guaranteed to lose the time because you don't have the top end of other cars in Group 3. But through the corners, you're admirable. And also, on worn tyres, it is a very well held together car. It's very difficult to get it wrong in the Subaru unless you do not anticipate when the car's going to get a little bit loose at the rear end. But typically, it's only when you've put a lot of wear into the tyres does it start to become quite loose. Now, the Porsche is being well, with Jenkster being one of the many Porsches around the circuit. The thing about the Porsche, mid-engine rear-wheel drive, engine towards the rear as a result, and the engine's quite low in the rear of the car as well, and it's low to the ground, quite a low ground effect on the Porsche 911. And what this means is that effectively this car is seen as the cornering car. in the fact they can go into the corners, get good rear end rotation and go for them. Particularly, let's say, the hairpins around here, such as turn 8 and turn 16, we should be expecting the Porsches to be very strong for those, and also the Mercedes arena, it'll be very collected. Downside of the Porsche, however, with the stock tune, particularly with the transmission, it's got a very odd gear selection. In fact, it does have 6 gears, much like most of the cars we see in Group 3, although there are some exceptions. But with the stock tune, the first, second and third gear of the car are much longer than you would expect in a GT3 car in the balance of performance. So if we compare this to, for example, the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1, the Aston Martin DBR9 GT1 will be in 4th gear by the time Jenkster's making his way, if he was using the stock transmission, midway through 3rd gear, and that's the difference there. But then again, if you can master that in the Porsche, you can make it work quite nicely as we get our second stock check race underway. As we pan down to the grid this time, we once again have Vitor Knight and Zen Ismail on the front row, this time Vitor being our lead driver, Luke behind them and Heidlis Cedes in the Peugeot RCZ starting off in 4th. And this time we are going to ride on board with one of our drivers towards the very rear, I should say, and that is Remwesh, who is going to be launching in the Ferrari. And this time it's lights out, away we go. And we see Vox Bacchus getting a very slow start there. I thought we had a stuck. And one thing to note about this Ferrari in particular, as we hop to the third-person camera, the Ferrari 458 Italia GT3 in Group 3 is the fastest launching car in the class by a huge margin. You saw there how Remwesh was able to get multiple positions before coming into the braking zone for turn 1, albeit it was absolute carnage in turn 1 that time. That's because the Ferrari has the best launch control and launch procedure of any of the cars here. So watch out for Remwesh. Wherever he starts, he'll be looking to gain at least 3 to 4 places just at the start alone, because that Ferrari has ferocious acceleration. But again, as I said, it'll be very strong over 1 lap as well. But when that tyre wear kicks in, you can imagine he's already up to 4th and charging his way up through the field in this practice stuck check race, albeit he goes wide there out of turn 6. He gets it together, but I think he ended up leaning a little bit on Zen Ismail, and there goes the car. It's loose. Very unfortunate for the British driver, but again, remember, this is just a warm-up race to make sure everything's working. It's not the actual race, and he will be remembering that as well. But we'll have to keep our eyes on that Ferrari, because I expect it to make leaps and bounds at the very start of the race, as we see Jerry, our driver, and his teammate Zen Ismail running around in 3rd and 4th right now as they make their way up towards the Schumacher S for this sole time. And Insubordinate trying to go up the inside of Vox Bacchus there into Schumacher S, and I think Insubordinate's going to be aware of the fact that that was quite an unfair move, and he is waiting immediately. I think he's realised, you know what, 2 does not go into 1 there at the Schumacher S, and unless you are really far ahead on the inside, you need to be very careful about whether you fully commit or not. And there, I think it was more of a case that he threw himself into the gap whilst it was open, when really he should have just been patient and waited for the run up towards turn 11. But of course, let me know your thoughts if you think differently. Now, as all of our drivers come to the end of this second stuck check race, we're going to see that the Portuguese Vitor Knight is going to be our winner by 2.4 seconds this time round over Heidlis Cedes in the Peugeot RCZ. The RCZ driver doing a very nice job in this practice race, and Jerry, our driver, and Zen Ismail coming across the line in formation for 3rd and 4th, and Spinky are bringing home a nice 5th place in the WRX. And Pies, I think, is just taking part in this one for a little laugh in the Alpha 4C, but we're not expecting our racing vigilator and trackside steward to be racing tonight. He is our director and host first and foremost. Luke bringing home P7 ahead of Jenkster, Tamir and Lone Racer rounding up our top 10, and Vox Bacchus and Insubordinate in P11 and P12, and Remwesh now coming across the line. That completes our second start check. Congratulations to all of our drivers for making it safely off the grid. So the good news is, folks, as a result of 2 successful start checks back-to-back, in 2 minutes' time, we will be getting underway with qualifying. We will have 3 races tonight, plus King of the Karts, of course, let's not forget that. But we're actually going to see a ton of racing tonight, and indeed, it'll be good to see how the EU Division 3 drivers get on. So if you haven't already, with 1 minute to go, be sure to make sure to go to the bathroom, do what you've got to do in there, grab yourself a glass of water or some sort of beverage, perhaps a snack or 2, and get ready for some intense qualifying action. As we say hello to Robert Dimikira in the chat, who's informed us that MDC, the EU Division 2 driver, is the only SAS team driver who's participating in the EU divisions for this season. Well, how about that? People do come and go, to be fair, in terms of participating in the seasons, but I know the SAS drivers do like to normally have a strong representation, and I'm sure they'll be back in future seasons in full force. As we see Luke making his way down towards turn 8, bringing that Porsche around. And as I was saying earlier, the Porsche is one of the more handling dominant cars here. As we can see, he's got third gear tuned all the way up to 117 miles an hour, and then fourth gear being a quite, short fourth gear. And I think it may be the case that Luke is running more towards the default transmission tune of that car as the Polish driver spins it out coming out to turn 8. Now, other cars will insubordinate bringing the Mazda Atenza. Now, the Atenza is a little bit of an odd one, because it's a car which, for many, as our American friend here, brings it out down towards turn 8. The Mazda Atenza is one of those cars which you don't really see too many of them, especially with the introduction of the Mazda RX Vision within Group 3. But when you do see them, they're a little bit of a force unknown and a force to be reckoned with. The plus sides of the Mazda Atenza are that it's got very strong acceleration, particularly in the mid gears, so 3rd, 4th and 5th. Well, I say 3rd, 4th and 5th. 5th is a higher gear, so 5th gear is quite strong. 6th gear can be a little bit lacking. Also, it's quite a planty car, quite a stable car, as we get underway with qualifying. And we say hello to Remon VM1. Hope you're doing well, Remon. And we are getting underway then with qualifying. Wasn't the Mazda OP for a time? Well, I'm not 100% sure about that, Pingo. It may have been. It may have briefly had a era of dominance. You might be right about that, because I know the Atenza in Group 4 has never been wholly considered overpowered. In fact, you're right, yes, because at Interlagos it used to be seen as the #1 go-to car, and that's the BOP circuit. So you are right, and the Mazda Atenza is far from that, as qualifying is now underway, ladies and gentlemen. We've got 12 minutes. Who's going to be on pole by the end of it? As we see that Vitor Knight, the Portuguese, is our first driver out onto the circuit, and all of our drivers will be charging out there in rapid formation, and we're looking to get themselves some space out on circuit, particularly after a little bit of controversy that occurred in EU Division 1's Round 1 earlier on this week, where a number of drivers did get warnings for running too close to one another in the qualifying session. Our drivers want to give themselves approximately 4 to 6 seconds of space between one another, because that way if the driver in front is just slower than you but on their own fast lap, you're not going to trip over the back of them. Something I've been personally guilty of in other championships, and indeed in GTSRL when I used to race as part of this league. But now they've stuffed me in the commentary box, thrown away the key and said you're not allowed to come out. Never. And I don't want to come out, folks, because I'm very happy being trapped in here, being able to bring you this action time and time again. But as we wait, we're just looking around and seeing that all of our drivers really are trying to make their way around as rapidly as possible in terms of our top 10 drivers, albeit we've got a couple of drivers towards the back who are taking it quite slow. We can see that Jerry, our driver, the Dutchman here, revving the engine out in his Aston Martin DBR9. I think trying to milk as much fuel out of the tank as possible, albeit as he makes his way through the Mercedes arena. I think there's going to be this contrast where he's going to get to a point in the outlap where he will decide to absolutely plant the throttle and go for it, just so that way he's got some warm tyres, because we've got quite low track temperatures at the moment, where the clouds are coming in, and it means that the tyres are going to take the best part of about half a lap to warm up, so you want to start warming up when you come out the Schumacher S's if you haven't already. Vitor Knight, on the other hand, is absolutely going for it, and we are going to ride on board with the Portuguese once he comes out of the final chicane and makes his way onto his opening flying lap. He's ahead of the field by a good amount of time, everybody giving themselves enough space out on circuit. So as he comes out the final corner, you see Vitor decides to go deeper than the normal line. That's to get the best possible exit speed out of the corner, but of course cost himself some time through the apex. That time doesn't matter on a warm-up lap. This is the lap where it's going to matter. So as he charges down towards turn 1 there, he's going to be braking at about that 100 board, snapping on the brakes and coming down through the gears quite rapidly. Staying in second gear, it's worth noting here, not going down to first gear, so feeling confident and comfortable with that second gear in the Aston Martin, as he does a snap shift there from second to third and back to second up to third, coming out of turn 2 and now into turn 3, going very deep into turn 3. And you could see there how he didn't want that to happen. He ran a little bit too late on his braking point and then had to use the delay in applying the throttle through 3 to get it tighter to the apex, which has cost cost him approximately 2/10 of a second coming out the Mercedes arena as he makes his way in towards turn 6. Doesn't make a hash brown of turn 6, however, gets it nice through turn 6 and plants it very nice. Well, I say plants it very nice, but does go wide of apex at turn 7. Again, that's going to cost him about 2/10 because of the fact he hasn't got a nice flying line through there. He's taken a very wide line, and now he's got a lot of speed up on the upside into turn 8, and as he goes through the hairpin here, regularly seen as a double apex hairpin, he makes his way through. Doesn't really use the full width of the tracks. This is looking a little bit scrappy from Vitor Knight on his opening lap, but he still does have plenty of time and absolutely throttles it through the Schumacher S here. Full of beans, full of confidence Vitor Knight is, and he makes his way up towards turn 11. Breaking out that 100 board using the full width for the entry curb, and now making his way out of the corner. Nicely done. And coming in towards turn 12 here, applying a little bit of brake. You can lift for that corner depending on which car you're in. It is subjective to the car, but does a very good job at 12 and will flow through 13. Now can he nail the chicane? And will this be in the region that we predict a 157 for pole in EU Division 3? Let's find out where he's able to achieve it as he comes into the chicane, coming down the second gear, cutting it nicely across the two curves and using the exit curb as well. Full measures there, and now coming into the final corner. This time he'll want that tighter line, or is he going to take a wide line and go for another flying lap immediately? Well, as he comes out the final corner across the line, it is looking to be a 1:57.1. So I think we're going to be seeing 56 based on that. A very nice lap by Vitor despite the mistakes. And as Luke now comes out of the final corner, how will the Polish 911 driver do by comparison? As the Polishman comes across the line, it is going to be a 2 minute and 2 minute 1.6. So not a great lap. He's got plenty more time to go as Insubordinate now comes across the line in the Atenza, and his opening lap will be a 1:58.7, at which puts him provisional P2, but Zanai Ismail jumps up to a 58.6 ahead of him now by 1/10 as we see the Peugeot of Heidlis Sides getting a 1:59.0. Plenty of time still in that lap as Jenkster comes across the line, the Welshman in the Porsche, with a 2 minute .3. And we've got Tamir about to come out the final corner, and what will this be? Well, it's not looking a great lap so far. I think his lap's been heavily compromised as we see Lone Racer coming across the line as well. Lone Racer moving up to what looks like P5 ahead of Tamir, definitely, and up into P5 he goes with a 1:59.1. I think he'll feel he was compromised a little bit behind Tamir coming out the final corner there, but he'll know he'll have an opportunity at the 1:58 as the fuel burns out the car, and there's plenty more life in that Dodge Viper for sure. As we noticed that Vox Bacchus actually has made his way up to provisional P2 with a 58.0. So unfortunately 9/10 of a Vitor Knight. Vitor Knight looking as though he is the man to beat right now, but the Porsche of Bacchus doing a very good job to nip it in the bud early and get up to P2 provisionally. Elsewhere around, are we seeing anybody else jump up the places right now? We can see Jerry, our driver, has burnt a lot of fuel and now is onto a flying lap, so we are going to ride with the Dutchman as he makes his way around the circuit and makes it very deep into turn 1 there. That's going to actually cost him quite a bit of time, probably about 2/10 in turn 1, and he immediately goes on the tack and really savages the apex curve there for turn 2, trying to make up for lost time in turn 1 through the Mercedes arena, and he's gone too aggressive into turn 3. That's going to cost him a 10th. He was able to get it under control, but you can see the frustration as he's come out of turn 4 there and absolutely planted the throttle down to come out of 4. He just knows he's lost the time and he can't afford to lose it, but he's already improving. I think the previous lap was an aborted lap in the end. He did some fuel burning as well as he makes his way through turn 7 and now down towards 8. And again, a number of drivers taking it very wide out of 7. I'm not sure if the grip's perhaps there at turn 7 at the moment. We haven't got as many marbles from the tyres as we perhaps expect at this point in the evening, and perhaps that's just catching our drivers out. They need to brake a little bit earlier for turn 7 than they are currently, as we see Jerry getting a bit hesitant on the throttle there and making a bit of a hash brown of coming out of turn 8 as he makes his way out to the Schumacher S. Now he's going to be fully planted as we switch to the third person camera, coming up towards turn 10 then, well, coming out of turn 10 I should say, and up towards turn 11, and well, is he going to nail the second part of sector 3 and make his way into sector 4 cleanly? So looking good so far, using the full track limits there for turn 11, and nicely done, very flown through there, and again the same for turn 12. But what about now the final sector, as he's definitely on a personal best, and I think he had to abort it at the final sector and made a major mistake. Making his way down now through 13, 14 and 15 coming up. He's going to have to nail this braking point. It's the difficult braking point of the chicane. It comes at you very quickly, a lot quicker than what you expect. Gets it very well done there, very well stopped at 14 and through 15. Now one corner to go. What will the Dutchman be able to do? It's looking a good lap. I suspect this could be a 1:57 of some sort as he comes out the final corner then, and it is going to be a 1:57.7, putting in provisional P2, 6 down on our leader at the moment in terms of temps, but 2.5 temps up on Vox Bacchus, who is making his way out on circuit at the moment and is compromised behind Tamir. He's going to have to abort that lap unless Tamir gets out of the way, because Tamir right now is on on a fast lap, but he's on a personal fast lap, and he has improved to a 202.3. It should be pointed out the Egyptian has improved so far. As we see Remwesh, meanwhile, making his way around on circuit, and hasn't actually set a time, has the Ferrari driver right now. So I think things have gone a little bit sideways for him, as he appears to be improving significantly. I think he made a major mistake in the Mercedes arena, because he's 5 seconds up on his previous best through there. That 207.0, not indicative of what the Ferrari driver's able to do. As we say hello to GTSB Patrick in the chat and RDutch175 as well. We hope you guys are doing well and enjoying things so far. Plenty more to come, of course, as we follow Remwesh around and drifting his way through the turn 8 hairpin there. You can see already that Ferrari's rear end very unstable through the corners and essentially sliding its way around. And that's one of the things that you have to get used to with the Ferrari. It's almost as if you've got a bit of a drift car unless you're very gentle on the steering. And you can see he's been caught out by running flat out through the Schumacher S, running out onto the gravel, and fortunately not wide enough to pick up a penalty. But the gravel on his tyres has cost him the grip into turn 11. You can see he missed the apex there by a couple of inches, and as a result of that, he's going to be losing time now. Now, in terms of being up on his previous best, he is up by 6 seconds, so this is going to be an improvement of a lap. But where is this going to place him? I think it's going to put him about P9 or P8 based on the current times, if he's fortunate not to make a mistake here, or I say a mistake, or get it wrong, or that Ferrari's not to slide out. But we're not going to discount Remwesh, of course, because he does seem to have something in the bag, as he gets it very clean through the chicane there. Very planted, jumping over the exit curve of turn 15. Or the apex curve of turn 15, I should really say. And now coming across the line, this is going to be a 59.7, moving up to a provisional P8 as we predicted. Spinky Biltong in the pits right now. These Subaru guys getting that car serviced and putting on a fresh pair of tyres with just 2.5 minutes to go. Now, as we look around, we can see that pole has been defeated. That provisional pole set by Vitor Knight has been changed. It is Zanayismail from Turkey now, the 156.989, who has done a phenomenal job of getting the lap up to there. But I've got to wonder whether that lap was set with a penalty, because we can see the P next to it. I doubt it was set with a penalty, because otherwise it would not have counted. So I think that is a legitimate lap, folks, but the hunt is on now and the fight is on for pole position. It is not going to go all the way with the Portuguese, or at least we don't think it's going to go that way, unless in the next 2 minutes he sets an absolute blinder, and he is not improving right now in this lap. He is 1.5 tenths down, but he is going to have one more lap to try and beat the Turkishman to pole, so we will wait and find out. In the meantime though, in terms of the wider gaps, we can see that Vox Bacchus chasing down Jerry, our driver, in the provisional qualifying standings. What the fact there's 2.5 tenths separating the two of them. Bacchus tripping over his teammate, but Jinkster immediately getting out of the way and giving his teammate the space out on the circuit. And I think Bacchus will feel solidly comfortable in being on the second row, but can he make his way onto the front row? That is the big question. But as we look further down the order, we see that Lone Racer right now not too far off of Insubordinate in the battle for the third row of the grid, and of course being at 5th place on the grid. Currently 6th is the Lone Racer in the Dodge Viper, and doing a good job of that 59.1, and he's going to have one more lap to go, as we've now only got 1 minute and 20 seconds of this qualifying session. And remember, when the 12 minutes pass, our drivers are allowed to complete their existing lap or their current lap, but of course you want to get round before the timer comes down, because if you're on an out lap, you're never going to improve. You want to be on that final flying lap, just literally as the clock is about to tick over. Be the last guy across the line, and then you don't have to worry about anyone putting pressure on you from behind. But we will wait to see what is going to happen as we look around, and we can see that Vox Bacchus is now on to his final flying lap, and we'll see Remwesh following in behind. I think Remwesh using Bacchus as a little bit of a pace car marker here, because of the fact that Bacchus has been a little bit faster in qualifying so far, and that's a good idea as well. If you know you're slower than the guy in front, and you don't have to worry about the guy in front holding you up, unless they make a major mistake, of course, or you suddenly find some pace out of nowhere. So we're going to stay with Bacchus for the time being as he makes his way through the Mercedes arena, very collected, and you can see just how well he can enable in that Porsche the apex of turn 3. That was a very clean apex. That Porsche's grip being very strong. As I'm just hearing, we've got some drivers coming across to begin new laps. This is a personal best and the fastest of anybody in sector 1 for Vox Bacchus, and all our drivers are going to make it onto one more flying lap. We've got a driver just coming across the line now, so he's just about made it, whoever that lucky soul is. So everybody's been told to finish their lap at this point, but we do see in the pits right now, I believe we have got C-Days in the Peugeot. He will be starting dead last because he's reset to the pits, unless he gets back out and actually we find out he was a bit faster. But we've got drivers coming up to the final corner. Then our first driver to complete the final flying lap will be Vitor Knight. Can he improve from 57.0 as he comes out the final corner? That wasn't a full run of the apex. It's not an improvement. What about Zanayismail? Can he raise the bar from that 56.9 for provisional pole. He comes out the final corner. It is not an improvement. So Zanaismal is now going to have to rely on other drivers not improving. As our next driver come across, we see Lone Racer also on a best of everybody going through Sector 1. So Sector 1 seems to be where Zanaismal is struggling. But meanwhile, coming out of the chicane and making his way up towards the start-finish line to complete his final qualifying lap, it is Tamer, who's picked up a half-second penalty at the chicane. So that penalty is going to prevent him from improving. I think Tamer is going to be starting last in this race unless Hylas Cedes does not get out the pits, because I know Cedes did improve a little bit earlier on. We see Voxback is coming across the line, and it is not a personal best all the way around the circuit, but it is a personal best lap, a 57.7. It wasn't enough to challenge for the lead, but he'll know that he is the strongest driver, one of the strongest drivers in sectors 1 and 2, given he was setting the timing boards purple in those sectors. As Jerry, our driver, is making his way round at the moment, we're just seeing if anybody else improves. As Insubordinate does not improve. I think there's been an accident also on the start-finish line, which we can see Remwesh and Tamer immediately pulling over to the left-hand side, but they're beyond the timing line, so I think they're just getting out of the way immediately, so there's not going to be any issues there. As Jerry R driver's coming around right now, and we can also see Lone Racer coming out the final corner, and this is looking a very strong lap from the Dodge driver, and it is a 57.7, putting him in provisional P3. But will Jerry R driver be able to respond? I don't think so. I think this is a cool down lap, so that means, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of qualifying for EU Division 3, pole position has been taken by the debutant of Zanaisval from Turkey in the Aston Martin DBR9. He will be joined on the front row, separated only by 600ths of a second, the Portuguese of Vitor Knight. Second place has gone to the second row of the grid will be started off by the Lone Racer in P3, ahead of Jerry R driver in P4. Only 600 separating those two, and then missing out on the second row by 2,000ths of a second, Vox Bacchus will start off our third row ahead of Insubordinate. And then it will be the Polish driver of Luke in the Porsche, starting off our fourth row in P7, ahead of Jenkster, who was 1.5 tenths down on him. And then Rimwesh, the Ferrari driver from the United Kingdom, starts off our fifth row, missing out on the fourth row by only 900ths of a second, and he'll be joined by Spinky Bouton. Tamer, meanwhile, will be starting, I think, P11, but I thought Hylas Cedes also did a lap, so this is a little bit confusing, and I'm not 100% sure what is going on here with regards to... Hold on a second, I think we've had a update with regards to... There you go, ladies and gentlemen, for your evidence. So Hylas Cedes is going to be starting P7. So that means every driver we've announced, such as Luke, Jenkster, will be starting one place down. So it'll be Hylas Cedes who starts off our fourth row. There's the clarification for you. And then we've got Jenkster who'll be starting off our fifth row alongside Remwish. And it'll be Spinky Biltong and Tamer 2010 who round up our final row of the grid. For reference, folks, the Division 1 qualifying time, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, was a 54.4 was the pole one. Or was it 55.6? I can't remember, to be honest. I thought it was a 54 for some reason. Perhaps I'm losing my mind. Or losing my memory for definite, as we're now waiting for things to get underway. And now we just count down. I think our drivers are going to get a time of day reset very shortly. Our trackside steward of Pies 1123 is just getting things organised in terms of the grid. But what a brilliant pole lap by Zanaismal, and that pole lap there being actually right in amongst the top drivers of EU Division 2 based on the laps we were seeing in the practice session last night. A very impressive lap from the Turkish driver. We're just waiting for things to get organised in the meantime. Our grid's being set at the moment. As we say hello to MDC. Hope you're doing well, MDC. And now, with the change of time of day, we are going to be asking our drivers to get back out on circuit, and race one will be coming at you. Now, the big question, of course, will be what will happen at the start of this race? Well, we have to consider that the big threat car of the Ferrari in the hands of Renwesh is starting towards the back. So I think our front row drivers, our first two rows in particular, will feel safe knowing that Ferrari is not going to leap them. However, a lot of drivers in the midfield will be aware of how strong that Ferrari is, and they will either need to accept the fact it's going to get past them or go ultra defensive versus it. Of course, we'll wait and find out. And we're just waiting for the race settings to be modified because it's currently listed as 1 lap. I believe we are going to be doing 5 laps for race number 1. Unless this is the all-new Super Sprint 1 lap series, which I doubt it is. I think that's just a mistake. But place your predictions now, folks. Place your bets. I personally think we could be seeing the dawn of a new race winner immediately in the form of the Nizmal. But I think this man here, Vitor Knight, is going to have something to say about it. The fact that 2 of them were separated by under a tenth in qualifying shows how close it is between them. And, well, we will wait and find out about that, of course. As we're waiting for everybody now to get readied up, although we are going to get a lobby reset most likely because of the fact we do not have the correct number of laps of the race right now. And as everybody's really waiting and raring to go. It'll be interesting to see how the Peugeot RCZ of High Lucides is able to do over the course of the race. We've got our fingers crossed for him, of course. And also Lone Racer, who put in a stellar performance in the end, and we have had the switch to 5 laps. We didn't get a time of day reset, it's just a switch to 5 laps. That's a simple fix. So now all of our drivers will be heading out onto the circuit, and race 1 will be coming at you within the next minute, I reckon. And here we go, race number 1. I've heard in confirmation it is coming at you any second now. There we go, ladies and gentlemen, race 1. Here we go. Oh, it's been a while since we've seen a race, but we're going to get one, and EU Division 3 are bringing it to us shortly. So as we pan down to the grid, there's the Nizmal on your right, Vitor Knight on your left. The 2 Aston Martin drivers will be going toe-to-toe down to turn 1. Lone Racer behind. What can the Dodge driver do from P3 on his debut in GTSRL? And we've got to look further back at Renwesh in P10. What will that Ferrari be able to achieve in the run down to turn 1? One red light, 2 red light, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights, and it's lights out and away we go. A very quick start, and that's caught a number of drivers by surprise, but it hasn't caught out Nizmal or Vitor Knight by surprise, as both drivers drag race their way down towards turn 1, and we can see that whilst the Nizmal got the better start, Vitor Knight going very deep on the brakes, as the Nizmal's immediately going to go for the cutback, and Jerry R driver tries to get into the mix, trying to follow his teammate through, as they all make their way through turn 2 now, and you can see High Lucides in P4 ahead of Lone Racer, who's dropped all the way back to P6. That's a disastrous start from the Dodge driver, as there's a bit of contact between Lone Racer and we can see Voxback. And Lone Racer goes a little bit sideways there. There was contact coming out of turn 3 and insubordinate the American German, making his way up to P6. The American represented Germany today, and now as they make their way down towards turn 6, we can see that 2 packs already formed as Tamer's up to P6. He goes for the move there into turn 6 and he gets it. Well, congratulations to him, as we see there's been some major contact between Lone Racer and also somebody else coming out of what looked to be turn 6 there on the exit. But meanwhile, up front, we can see Nizmal is leading ahead of Vitor Knight, followed by Jerry R driver, and then we've got the Porsche Voxbackers and the Peugeot RCZ of High Lucides in P5. So our top 5 are making a clean break from the rest of the field right now. But meanwhile, at the head of the second pack, insubordinate in the Attends are very planted for the Schumacher S, but we know that it can't go full throttle for the Schumacher S unlike the DBR9s, and that means that Tamer is going to be all over the back of him, and we can see that the Egyptian driver is really trying to squeeze the throttle on here, but meanwhile behind him, Renwish goes a little bit wide. I think he tried to go for a move around the outside of Tamir, and it didn't work as Luke respects the fact that he was coming back on the circuit and gave him the space, which the Polish driver didn't have to do, but he did nonetheless, and that was a very nice bit of sportsmanship there, and Jenkster just watches on from P10. And as they go through the chicane right now, they're a little bit spaced out up front, and are making their way out to the final corner. It has been quite a changing lap over lap 1, and there's been a lot of action already. So we count it through as they come across the complete lap 1 onto lap number 2. It's an Ismail, 1.2 seconds ahead of Vitor Knight, followed by Jerry R. Driver, and then 5 tenths down it's Vox Bacchus, followed by Hylis Cides. Then we've got the pack of P6 down to P10 of Insubordinate, followed by Tamir 2010, then Remwesh, followed by Luke, followed by Jenkster. Then we've got Lone Racer, well, all the way down in P11 at 6 seconds down on P10, and making his way out the final corner across the start finish line onto our time screens, and Spinky Biltong in last but not least right now. As we look up, we can see there's not... Well, hold on a second. We say there's been not much change, but Vitor Knight right now has been passed by Jerry Ardro coming into turn 1. The move has been made, albeit we didn't see it on camera, as Vitor Knight now has to go defensive versus Vox Bacchus, and we can see that Vox Bacchus is away the back, but the Peugeot of Hylis Cides is just falling back a little bit, just doesn't have the legs right now to stay competitive for the podium, but the British driver will be happy with that P5 if he can bring it home, and Remwesh, I'm happy to say, folks, has made his way up into P7 ahead of Tamir now. Tamir started to fall by the wayside a little bit on lap number 2, but still doing his utmost to stay in this one, and battling with Jenkster as they make their way into a drag race down towards turn 8, and you can see that the Aston Martin has just got so much punt out of turn 7 as it runs down to 8, but Jenkster's going to the inside. He's looking to try and size up a move, but he can't make it happen. He has got the overlay into the corner, and that means he's going to have to stay behind through the Schumacher because he's not going to have the momentum up the hill to overtake Tamir before the braking zone. But meanwhile, further up front, we look back to our top leaders right now, and we can see that Vitor Knight is dropping away from Jerry R. Driver. So the Aston Martin driver here can't keep up with his fellow manufactured cars, and instead is falling into the slippery hands of the Porsche Vox Bacchus behind him. And as we ride on board here with Bacchus, you're riding on board in his cockpit right now, you can see that he's right out the backside of this Aston Martin. I think he will be loving this. He'll be thinking to himself, brilliant, I know the Aston Martin follow, and you could see there how Vitor Knight struggled to get the car to turn into turn 14, and it means that Bacchus got so close to that he had to slam on the brakes a little bit extra, and Vitor Knight is struggling right now as they're coming out to turn 16 once again, and I think at this rate we could see Cides getting into the mix. As we look further behind at the rear view camera, you can see that Insubordinate coming out the final corner, hold on to P6 at the time being, but Renwish is closing him down little by little. That gap now down to 1.3 seconds, and the legs on that Ferrari are just running like mad. You can see he is stripping time out of Insubordinate on the straights. He just stripped 2.5 tenths in the acceleration zone down to turn 1 alone, and if he can get it now for the Schumacher, so through the Mercedes Arena and also the Schumacher S, well, I think that Ferrari is going to be attacking Insubordinate in no short order, because he is on a charge right now, is this man here, as Tamir falls a little bit further back now down to 1.4 seconds, but Jenkster is not capitalising on the difficulties that the Egyptian is having right now, and is instead 1.1 seconds behind, although he's had a good run out of turn 4-5. But whilst we've been having all that going on, we're just going to hop back and see what happened to Lone Racer on lap number 1. It's a long way back. So Lone Racer coming out of what was turn 4-5 there, he found himself out on the dirt, making an opportunistic pass around the outside. There was contact with Spinky Biltong, and I think he didn't realise that Spinky was there. Spinky got knocked and just couldn't stop the car. I think Lone Racer was trying to get the car stopped to respect the fact he'd made that mistake, but Spinky in the end collided into it. So it worked out in a sort of natural way in the end, but not the way either driver would have wanted it to. Neither of them would have wanted to be in that accident. As we see Jerry Ardro, as we cut back to our second place fight right now, Jerry Ardro now feeling quite a bit of pressure from Vitor Knight. I think the Portuguese driver has finally settled down and realised that, you know what, perhaps I've had a bad couple of opening laps, so it's not going to define my race. And he is all over the back of Jerry Ardro like a bad rash. I've seen wasps attack animals like that before, and he is literally stinging at the back of Jerry Ardro like a busy, buzzy bee, or a wasp in that instance. Not comparable, the two of them, although I confuse them all the time. As Vitor Knight overextends it on the brakes, I think both drivers there were careful not to pick up a penalty by overextending the curve on 15, but you could see how they both got it wrong there. They're too busy fighting one another, and what this means is that your pole sitter is running away to 4.3 seconds now as they go on to lap number 4. Well, Zanaismail will be loving this. He won't have to worry, and looking back from Jerry Ardro and Vitor Knight, As they come into turn one, will Vitor try and go for a lunge up the inside? No, he doesn't release the brakes or tap the brakes, although Jerry Ardro gave him the space, and Vitor drops it too heavily on the curb there over turn one, and it means he's lost all the momentum he's gained, and now he's got to do it all again. And Vox Bacchus right now will be rubbing his hands together and thinking, right, well, Vitor's too busy fighting, trying to get himself sized up. Let me just get really nice and close to the back of this Portuguese driver and perhaps go for a move on the final lap. I think the Welshman is just waiting to strike and pounce as Haile Sides is sat behind him right now and making his way up towards turn 6 along with the rest of it, and you can see that Bacchus is trying to find a way of getting into Vitor Knight's mind, because he is literally putting his nose where it shouldn't be right now, just on the inside of each corner. And I think Vitor Knight is looking back right now and thinking, go away Porsche, I want to hunt down an Aston Martin, I don't want to have to deal with you. But the pesky Porsche soldiers on, as behind the little Peugeot, the proud Peugeot, tries to chase after, flashing his lights as well. Perhaps he's hit the emergency brakes, breaking into turn 8, and insubordinate hold on to P6, and Remwesh has not caught up to him. In fact, the gap has opened up by 8 tenths over the last lap. I think that Ferrari is starting to hit a little bit of a cliff in terms of one lap performance, but to be fair, Remwesh will be happy with this if he holds on for much longer. As we see in the back of your camera shot there, Luke and Lone Racer battling for P10 at turn 8, and I think Lone Racer has got the move done on Luke. I think he's beaten the Porsche into the corner and out of it. A nice move there, and we're going to take a quick look back and see what happened as we ride on board with Lone Racer. So it's a standard move, I think. We're going to jump on board with the bonnet here. I think Luke, in fact, went too deep there, more focused on trying to worry about defending against Lone Racer rather than trying to make it through the corner, and the mistake was made, and that's how the war was won for the British driver. As we look around and we see Vitor Knight is up into P2, so where has that happened, folks? Well, as they were coming up towards the chicane, does Jerry R. driver go wide or something along those lines? Because that is, well, it's not looking as though he had a move on, although Vitor Knight went for it, he squeezed it in, and he just went for the move. That was a very nice move by Vitor, and from very far back as well. Credit to Jerry, however. You've got to give Jerry credit, folks, because he would have seen that coming and he gave the space accordingly. I think Vitor Knight decided just to send it, and by licking the stamp and sending it, the mail arrived on time. And now it's Jerry, our driver, who is being harassed by Vox Bacchus as they're on the final lap, and now the Porsche will want to strike for the podium, and Jerry, our driver, going very deep into turn 3. We're going to stay with these guys for the time being, folks. So you can see Vox Bacchus trying to go for the back cut through turn 4 and 5. He's trying to cut around the Aston Martin to get the legs on it, because once that Aston Martin gets it planted and straight, it's going to run away from the Porsche, and Bacchus needs to strike as soon as humanly possible, because that Aston Martin right now is not settled, but as soon as it comes out of turn 8, it will be settled and it will be ready to go. We're waiting to see then, as Bacchus, will he go for a move into turn 8? He's going to go for it late on the brakes, and he goes to the inside. Jerry Ardro tries to cut back inside, but he can't find the cutback. A classic move into turn 8, and as they make their way up through 9 and 10 now, remember, Jerry Ardro is going to have the run out of 9 and 10, but will Bacchus immediately go defensive into 11? Surely he's got to, but look at Ardro. He's all over the place, trying to find a way through it, and he's going to go for it up the inside into 11. Ardro coming back, the Dutchman fighting back, and there was contact. There was a little bit of contact to the rear end of Jerry R. driver, and well, I think it's been all restored and it's all resorted to, but look at how Vox Bacchus now is able to pull away as a result of Jerry R. driver going wide there. There may be a little bit of a waggle of the finger to Bacchus for what happened there. Well, I don't think it's going to be anything serious, but talking about serious, he's made a serious mark on this one, folks, as he comes around the final corner. It's your race winner for race 1 on his debut. It is the nice male from Turkey in his Aston Martin DBR9. What a brilliant result for him, and plenty more racing to come. Second place in the end is going to go to Vitor Knight, a difficult race for the Portuguese, and Bacchus holds on to third ahead of Jerry R. driver and Haile Sides, rounding off your top 5. Insubordinate having a very quiet race in P6, but the Atenza driver will be proud of that. And then Remwesh on his debut in his first race, picking up a P7 in the Ferrari. Well, how about that? Ahead of Jenkster, and then the drag race to the finish line, it will be Tamer bringing home a P9 ahead of Lone Racer, and it will be Luke followed by Spinky Bultong rounding up P11 and P12. Plenty more racing to come from these two. Congratulations to all of our drivers, of course, but most importantly, congratulations to our race winner, Zanizmal. Well, I think we all missed a good bit of racing, don't you? And with that, EU Division 3 definitely didn't disappoint in the fact that as we take a look at the race results, and we also save the replay, as we always do, Our race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries for race 1 of EU Division 3 round 1. Zanaismail, your race winner by 5.7 seconds ahead of Vitor Knight. The Portuguese having a very difficult opening race of tonight. But what can he do in race 2, of course? Vox Bacchus being pipped to P2 by Vitor Knight, but I think Bacchus will be very happy with a third place in the fact that he just managed to scoop it away from Jerry R. Driver, making that Porsche work hard for its results. Jerry R. Driver and the high list C-Days rounding off our top 5. C-Days there in the Peugeot, not to be understated, bringing home a nice, comfortable top 5 placement there. Our fastest lap was achieved by Zanaismail on lap 4 of a 1:57.768. And now we just wait for race number 2. Now, the big questions, of course, going into race number 2 will be, what can we expect to see? Well, we know it's going to be Zanaismail on pole again, and he will know that Vitor Knight starting in P2, Vitor will be on the inside, and if Vitor can get the run into turn 1, he's going to go for it, because we saw that in race 1. So Zanaismail may be a little bit more defensive and may try to cut across into turn 1 to try and close the door early. However, one other thing to keep in mind is that we now have that very fast launching Ferrari of Remwesh further up the order. It's now in P7. And you're probably thinking at this point, okay, so what? Well, given the fact that Ferrari launches so fast, if Remwesh can nail his start, I reckon he could be fighting for P4, P3 as they go into turn 1. And if he's able to nail it, he could really throw a spanner into the mix for our top 5. Other cars to think about, well, we do have one driver who didn't really get an opportunity in the end because of the incident between himself and another driver, and that was Spinky Biltong. We saw the lone racer make a lot of recovery work, but I think Spinky ended up being left behind because of the incident between the pair of them. Now, not unfortunately blame or anything, it looked like a racing incident. It looked like lone racer could perhaps be attributed a little bit more to because he perhaps didn't see Spinky Biltong and forced him wide, but it resolved itself in terms of the incident where both drivers ended up being falling a part of it. And we'll just have to wait and see. That's why we've got plenty more racing to come as we get the change of time of day, and we've got another 5 laps to come right at you. Another sprint. And if you want a little bit of funny trivia, folks, going into tonight's race, Zanaismail didn't know about the radar, didn't have it active in terms of his heads-up display, having the radar to see when cars are close to him. And one of the reasons why we had a small delay was because people were telling him about that. Because what we try to do at GTSRL is particularly for all divisions, but the lower divisions in particular, is we try to encourage everybody to run with the race radar on where possible, and there was a lot of confusion as to what we were talking about in terms of the race radar, but the Turkishman understood what we meant in the end, and well, it's definitely helped him out because racing with the radar is able to go a bit defensive on the opening laps, and he's able to do a good job of bringing it home in first, leading from the start. But whilst we're waiting, I'm going to check if we've got any drivers out on the circuit right now. And we do have some drivers practicing their starts, such as the Atenza in Subordinate, for getting a practice start in. And you can see how delayed the start of that Atenza is. The amount of triggering on that traction control system from the Atenza, as Jerry R. Driver also decided to do some practice. But once it gets past first gear, you can see how the acceleration picked up on that Atenza. So that's the thing. Once it gets past first gear in its poor starting sequence, I think it could be very strong. Meanwhile, Jerry R. Driver doing a similar thing in his Aston Martin, a much easier starting procedure. But as we're waiting to go, we're just going to take a look at what you guys and girls have been saying in the chat. We've got a lot of thumbs up for the fight for P2, and we're getting underway with race number 2. Here we go, folks. Race number 2 coming right at you. So as we pan down to the grid, once again, it will be Zanaismail on pole on the right-hand side of your screen, Vitor Knight on the left-hand side, much like race 1, but this time Vox Bacchus starting on the right-hand side of row number 2 alongside Jerry R. Driver. What can the Porsche do from P3? But keep an eye out for the Remresh Mobile, the Ferrari in P7. Will it come charging up to the front? And it's the lights out and away we go in a much slower starting sequence this time, giving our drivers plenty of time to react. And Remwesh already making his way up between P6 and P5 as Bacchus tries to go through the middle of Zanaisval and Vitor Knight into turn 1. And I think Bacchus has nailed on the brakes, but Jerry Aldridge just squeezes and Vitor Knight is spun. And there's a massive concertina effect, which means a lot of drivers have been caught out trying to wait for one another. This is a disaster for our top 3, but look who's up front now. Remwesh from P7 up into the lead, and Subordinate into P2 from P6. And then we've got Jengster. Well, where on earth did that come on? Somebody's into the wall at the exit. Who is that who's just been sent flying into it? It's a Nightmare. Oh, how the tables have turned. And everybody's waited. There's been contact when I think Tamer's the one who feels responsible for that because he's waited for it. My good Lord. I can't believe it. What on earth has happened? We will find out shortly for you folks, but the whole field has been turned upside down and spun around. Goodness me, but right now, I mean, coming down towards turn 8, we can see that Remwesh is pulling away using the opening pace of that Ferrari as Jengster has got ahead of Insubordinate coming out of turn 7 in the run down to 8. And that means we have got a Porsche in second, we've got a Mazda Atenza in third, a Ferrari in first, and a Porsche in P4. And we see that the 2 Welsh Porsche drivers here really doing a good job on capitalising on all the chaos, albeit Bacchus will wish that he was the one up into P2 right now. And he's got Vitor Knight, a very fast charging Aston Martin, in the hands of a fast charging Portuguese who will be absolutely swearing at the fact that he is not right up front right now, because he will feel that that carnage was something that he should not have been a part of. And we will take a look, and he's already on the attack, and Vitor Knight's looking to the inside, and Voxbacker says you can't come through, but Vitor Knight says screw that, I am coming through, and he just simply forces the move on, and he's up into P4, and it's Subordinate having to hold himself up behind Jengster. Had a bad run out of chicane. Vitor Knight making 2 places in 1 chicane, and it looks like Jengster's gone wide as well. So after 1 lap, it is Remwesh 3.8 seconds ahead of the fast charging Vitor Knight, who's battling with Jengster for P2. Jengster in P2 right now, Vitor Knight in P3, Voxbackers in P4, Insubordinate in P5, followed by Jerry Aldro in P6. It's 3 wide coming, oh my good Lord, it is 4 wide, 5 wide, coming down into turn 1. Insubordinate goes incredibly deep, and he's off into the wall. Vitor Knight has to brake as hard as possible to get it started, but Voxbackers is up into P2. You wouldn't believe it. And Vitor Knight is in the middle of a Porsche sandwich. It's the Welsh flavoured Porsche sandwich, and behind them Jerry R driver back up into P5, and Speaky Biltong, well, the little Subaru is scoobering along and has made it up into P5, into P6, but everybody's getting sideways as Jerry R driver tries to get it under control, and so does Zanaismal, who's back into P7. He's got past the lone racer, and Highness Cides, well, he's in P9 right now, and Tamer behind him in P10, although Luke, I say that, Luke is just going for the move, but he hasn't been able to get it on Tamer. And as they come out of turn 7 here, you can see that the Polish driver is doing everything he possibly can to find his way back past the Egyptian driver as they make their way down towards turn 8. And I don't think the Porsche's got the legs. And Insubordinate right now, after, well, I say that, hold on, we always cut away at the wrong time there. Luke goes to the move, he forces the move on the inside there versus Tamer, albeit Tamer left the door open, but that Aston Martin's got too strong a set of legs to run up towards the Schumacher. I don't think it's going to be on, and that means Tamer's hold on to P10 for a little bit longer, and Insubordinate will get in the mix of this shortly. As we can see, meanwhile, Voxbackers is still holding on to P2 up front, coming on to Sector 4 right now, charging through turn 13 up towards 14 and 15, but Vitor Knight has already got the run of Voxbackers before they even get to turn 13. That's how strong that Aston Martin is on the straights in 4th and 5th gear, that Vitor Knight just cruises past, and behind them, Jengster falls victim to the same overtake attempt by Jerry R driver, so the Porsche drivers both losing the place down to 3rd and 5th respectively now, as Jerry R drives up into P4, and behind Jengster in P6, Spinky Biltong sees Zanaismal over the back of him, but Zanaismal does have a half-second penalty. He has to burn on the start-finish straight. Immediately should, or that's going to get reported to the stewards, no doubt, by some of the other drivers. He doesn't burn it, and he's going for the move instead into turn 1, and Spinky Biltong will simply not want to defend this too much because he'll know Zanaismal's technically making an illegal move right now. But you do love to see the battling, ladies and gentlemen, and Spinky says, you know what, if you're going to pass me like that, I'll go for the cutback, but he doesn't get it done because Zanaismal shuts the door, although he goes deep into turn 2, and Spinky now finds himself on the inside, and that is the handling of that Subaru for you, ladies and gentlemen. We talked about it so much in the pre-show, and Spinky Biltong is showing us what it can do. That WRX, brilliant full of grip, and Zanaismal's going to have to find another way through, and I think he's going to try and force the situation into turn 6 as they make their way down. Zanaismal goes for it on the brakes, and Spinky Biltong finds himself on the outside, and he won't want to stay there for too long, but he throws it back in. He's not giving up. It's the British driver, and we see that Jengster has gone charging off there. Well, Well, what on earth has happened to Jenkster? We will have to find out in a bit. And we've got yellow flags all over the circuit right now. I don't know. And Rimwish, what has happened to our race leader? Who's got it all sorts of wrong. We wind back then and take a look. So Remwish, who was in the lead by a comfortable margin of about 4 seconds coming down into turn 8, has he just scored too late on the brakes? No. And he would have had it all to himself with time. He's down to P4 right now, and he's in that battle for P4 versus Zanizval, who's trying to catch up to him. But how the tables have turned as we see Spinky Biltong throws it up to the inside, but he goes a bit deep through the corner here, and well, it's not looking good for Spinky Biltong. It's gone from good to great to bad to worse in the space of only half a lap as the Subaru falls down the order. Everybody is all over the place, and now that means the one guy who got dished the dirty at turn 1 on lap 1 is now our race leader coming out of the final corner onto lap number 4. It is the Portuguese Vitor Knight, who is now leading Jerry R driver by 2.2 seconds as they come across the timing lines to begin lap 4. And Vox Bacchus, well, he's in P3, but he's got Rimwish behind him, acting as a little bit of a shield as we see Zanizval still has got that penalty and he needs to burn it. And you can see Lone Racer is flashing his lights to say to Zanizval, you've got to burn that penalty, mate. You can't keep doing this. It's not on. Well, Zanizval's definitely going to get a chat by the stewards after this one because he should have burned that by now, and Lone Racer should be the one up into P5. But still, wait, see, as we see Spinky Biltong, I think, has gone a bit sideways out of turn 1. We'll get that back on camera shortly for you folks. And Jenkster right now in P7 trying to catch up to Lone Racer, but the Dodge has got the legs on those straights. But what could Jenkster do with the handling of the Porsche through the corners as we see Heidis CDs in P8 in the Peugeot right now. The Peugeot making a little bit of a recovery drive here, but I don't think he's going to be getting to the top 5 in this one with 2 laps to go. Behind them, of course, we've still got Luke in P9, the Polish driver in the Porsche, having broken away from Tamer, and Tamer, I think, has just been overtaken. Well, he's battling with Insubordinate coming out of turns 4, 5 and up into 6, and the Atenza driver has made his way past the Egyptian in the Aston Martin, and indeed Insubordinate has got that P10 at long last, albeit he ran a little bit wide coming out of turn 6 to get it, but he has got it in the end. And meanwhile, in P12, what happened to this man here, Spinky Biltong? Let's find out. Well, so coming down towards turn number 1 then, I think he's just going to get too adventurous on the power. I think that's what made it go wrong. As he came out of turn 1, yep, he got on the power too soon and the car decided to snap oversteer. That is very unfortunate for the British driver, but I'm sure he'll be able to recover it in race number 3. If anyone can, Spinky Biltong can. But meanwhile, up front, we can see Jerry R driver losing a bit of time to Vox Bacchus, and in fact, Bacchus getting closer to the back of the Dutchman is the Brit in the Porsche. The Porsche getting a little bit of life now towards the end of the race as we see Zanizval battling with Remwesh here, and I think this battle has been ongoing for some time, and Remwesh is going to lose 2 places to 1 as Lone Racer capitalised on the fact that Remwesh was compromised through the exit of the chicane, what the fact he was side by side with Zanizval going through 14, and Lone Racer says, you know what, I'll take that 2 for 1 special, it's on offer, I'll go and grab it. But we'll check back and see exactly how that played out, as we can see that Lone Racer is having to go defensive as they go on to the final lap, and Remwesh on a charge here, and he's going to have to go around the outside of Lone Racer into turn 1. Can he do it? I think he's gone very deep on the brakes. You can see those carbon ceramic discs are glowing red hot, but Remresh has done it. He has gone around the outside of Lone Racer into turn 1 on the brakes, and now can Lone Racer come back at him into turn 3 in the Mercedes Arena? Lone Racer does, in fact, and he goes on the inside, and I think he's going to be picking up a half-second penalty because that looked like a sizable cut of the turn 3 apex there. In fact, he's backed off of it, and he has not accrued a penalty. Instead, Remresh just simply holds him off. What a brilliant fight between the two, and we're not actually going to cut away to the replay. We're going to stay because I think more action is going to come here as we can see that Vox Bacchus, in fact, has made his way up into P2. Well, now what's happened to Bacchus? We can see he got it done in the arena because we haven't been able to see it through turn 6, so he must have got it done at turn 3. But the battle for P4 right now continues, and Remresh has got a lot of momentum on Zanizval, and Lone Racer's going to try and come through with him, and Zanizval's off onto the grass as he got the car. Well, I don't know, hold on a second, that wasn't Zanizval's. I'm not sure what happened there. We saw one driver go wide off onto the grass, but I don't think it was Zanizval in the end. I think he's got it back. He's dropped down to P7, however, that's for sure. That was a little bit confusing there. Oh my goodness, and Jenkster's off into the wall. Oh no, and that is a disaster for the Welshman, literally with only half a lap to go, but we can't go back to that as we see the battle for P4 right now. Remresh is having to fight tooth and nail to hold on against 2 fast charging front engine rear drive beasts of machinery. The Ferrari's not going to give up as Lone Racer is all over the back of him and trying to find a way through, but Remresh pulls to the inside, pulls to the outside, and Lone Racer's going to do him on the brakes. But coming out the final corner, your race winner at the end of race number 2 is Vitor Knight by 4 seconds ahead of Vox Bacchus, who managed to hold off Jerry R. Driver in the end. But meanwhile, in the battle for B-Boy, it's going to be the final corner, and Lone Racer defending on the inside at turn 16. And in the end, Sir Nightsmail capitalises on both of them fighting and picks up 4th place. Oh no, hold on a second, it's Lone Racer ahead of Remrish, and Sir Nightsmail with that penalty drops 2 places. So in the end, it works out, and Heideless Sealace in P7, Jenkster in the end P8, and it will be Luke in P9 and Tamer in P10, and Spinky Biltong burning a penalty in P11. And then insubordinate, last but not least. What a confusing order with those penalties being accrued, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very sorry for that confusion. But insubordinate will round out our field in P12. And, well, congratulations to all of our drivers, but congratulations to our race winner, Vitor Knight from Portugal. Well, that was absolutely crazy. I honestly don't think any of us expected it to start like that. But what a job from Vitor Knight to recover from what was a great move into turn 1 for P1, to be spun out, put sideways, dropped all the way down to about P8, and then to bring it home in P1 in the end, as we see on that final race result standing, subject to any stewards' inquiries, which I think there are going to be quite a few following this race. Vox Bacchus doing a great job to hold off Jerry R. Driver for P2. That Porsche getting faster by the race mileage, and I think Bacchus could be looking to challenge for P1 in the next race. Jerry R. Driver completing our podium, and then Lone Racer bringing home that P4 just ahead of Remwish. The two coming together quite closely towards the end. I think they both might be throwing a few insults at one another. Polite insults, of course. It was a good rivalry, but it did get very heated in the end. And Zanizmal coming across the line in P4, but in the end, due to the penalty, he hadn't burned, and it was round back up to a second penalty, as is the way in GT Sport, coming home in P6. The fastest lap in race 2, a 1:57.761, as set by our race winner Vitor Knight on lap number 3. But what a crazy race. But it is getting a little bit heated down in the paddock right now, folks. That race was, it literally had everything. It had carnage, it had accidents, it had late braking, it had recovery drives, it had epic stories. I don't think you could ask for much more from a race in GTSRL, albeit it probably wasn't the cleanest. It was a bit scrappy. We're not going to lie about that one. But then again, a good number of our EU Division 3 guys, some of them are very new to the racing within a competitive scene like this. So they'll learn. They'll get some penalties, they'll get some warnings, but they will learn. But in the end, what a race. And really now, place your predictions for race number 3, the strategy race. Now, talking about the strategy aspect, what we do know is that our drivers have to pit. As we take a quick sip of water before I completely lose my voice. We know our drivers have to pit, but the question is, do they take tyres? Well, we saw a lot of drivers who pitted early or by about lap 6 in EU Division 1 on Monday of this week. They took fresh tyres. It was our leaders who decided to pit as late as possible, setting a trend, effectively, where if you're in the lead, you might as well pit towards the end by looks of things. They pitted and did not change their tyres. So I think that's going to be a similar theme here. If a driver feels that they're going to be comfortable on 10-lap old tyres, then they'll simply pit on lap 8 or 9 and make their way through to the end. Whereas if you're starting further back, I think it's a good gamble to pit on, say, lap 2, 3 or 4, put on a fresh set and then just go full attack, because you've got nothing to lose, and it's, of course, the bonus points round where our points are amplified by 50% for any finishing position. And I agree, and I think in the chat a lot of people are going wild. We've got a few bonks in there. We've got a lot of celebrations for Vitor Knight, who pulled off that brilliant recovery. We've got mentions of it being a complete and utter Gekkenhoes by our Dutch community here. I can't remember what that translates to in English, but if it is profanity, I apologise in advance. Oh, what a brilliant, brilliant race. I say things are needed to calm down at the moment in the paddock. We have got a few people having to be calmed down a little bit because there is a lot of animosity with everything that happened, particularly on lap 1. But it's good to see. We've just got some stewards getting involved now, some additional stewards, how to pull some drivers apart, I think. I think there's a little bit of threatened slapsies and fisticuffs down in the chat. But we're just waiting now for the final race of the evening to get underway, the 10-lapper here. And I think this man right now, the Turkish driver of Zanizmal, will be looking to do everything he possibly can to wrest a result out of this one. He will know, or feel at least, that he was cheated of a solid result in the fact that he dropped so far down the order. Of course, he didn't burn that penalty, so he can't be excused for that, but he will want to be back on that podium. Ah, Crazy House, I was going to say, I didn't want to try and guess what it was. And we've just got Lone Racer doing a practice start here. And you can see the amount that the traction control has to be applied initially on the start procedure in that first gear for the Dodge. It's got a lot of power that it's trying to put down immediately. Of course, some drivers will be pulling off without using traction control. Oh, dearie me. And K Tucson, one of our drivers from EU Division 2 who didn't get to race yesterday, has said that he's currently working on his totally legit BMW M3 GT in his garage in preparation for tomorrow. As race number 3 is about to get underway, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go then. The final EU Division 3 race of this evening. How's it all going to play out? Let's find out. So as we pan down to the grid then, it's Vitor Knight on your right and Vox Bacchus on your left-hand side. Behind them, Jerry R. Driver and Lone Racer. But watch out for Remresh, starting in P5 in that Ferrari. He's going to launch fast. And what can Zanizmal do from P6 in a recovery drive attempt? It's lights out and away we go, and Lone Racer jumped the start, so he's going to be sat stationary there, and he pulls off, and I think he's caused Jenkster to clip into the wall a little bit. That's very unfortunate, but Lone Racer has dropped down, and where he has dropped, others have prevailed as Renwish tries to find a way in, but all three of our drivers ahead of him, very wary of that Ferrari strengths down into turn 1, but Renwish gets great acceleration out of turn 1, and is up into P3 already as Zanizmal is over the back of Jerry R. Driver, and Renwish is knowing that he's got to go for the moves early. He's squeezed to the inside of turn 3 by Vitor Knight. I think there was just enough space there, but the Portuguese literally giving him the bare minimum breathing room, and that's all as they all come out of turn 4, 5 and now down to 6, and Renwish is battling to the inside of Vitor Knight for P2 into 6, and he's going to have it on the inside, but Vitor Knight stays in there, and he's just not able to get, but he does tuck the car back in, and Renwish is up into P2. Further down the order, Jerry Ardry has dropped down to P5 with Zanizmal making it up into P4 as they run down in towards turn 8. Zanizmal on the inside of Vitor Knight as they make their way out towards turn 8, but I think Zanizmal is more defensive versus Jerry R. Driver as we see that Renwish has gone very deep into turn 8 and Vitor Knight is attacking him once again, and they're both side by side up to Schumacher. Now who's going to back out here? And Renwish does not back out of it, but he goes sideways. That is very unfortunate. I think there's going to be a huge stewards inquiry after that one because he was literally side by side and neither driver wanted to back out. But away from that and onto the racing, place your thoughts in the chat, folks. I'm not sure about that one, to be honest with you, but C-Days meanwhile the Peugeot driver up into P5, a little bit unsettled through P6, but I think there's some contact from Lone Racer behind, and Lone Racer has made his way up into P6 and is chasing after that disastrous start with the full start penalty. Now as they make their way up towards the chicane for the first time of asking, you can see that Vox Bacchus has broken away a little bit. As the evening clouds are descending on the circuit, we're getting a little bit of a haze, which will make it difficult to judge those braking points. But all our drivers making it through the chicane safely as they come out of the final corner. Then it is Voxbacchus leading by 1.8 seconds over Vitor Knight, followed by Zanaisbal, who's chasing only 8 tenths behind. Then Jerry R driver in P4 ahead of Lone Racer in P5, who has got past Hylis coming out of the chicane into turn 16. Luke in P7, followed by Ensavona in P8, then Jenkster in P9, Remresh in P10 after the incident between himself and Vitor Knight at the Schumacher S on lap 1. And it's Spinky Bilton in P11, who's had another disastrous start, and Tamer 2010, who's all the way down the order. I'm not sure what happened to Tamer, but he is the last of our bunch right now, 9.4 seconds down on Spinky Bilton. But meanwhile, up front, Voxbacchus doing a very good job of just simply running away with things. But Zanaismal, meanwhile, has made his way up into P3. And as we look back, as they were coming out of turn 2, what you see is Zanaisbal is all over the back of Vitor Knight. And you could just note as well how Zanaisbal just has so much more confidence at turn 3 as we look back at the replay camera briefly. And it's Vitor Knight is just struggling to get the car switched on in the early stages of the race. It seems to be a theme with him as we see Zanaisbal look into the inside of Vitor Knight coming into turn 8, but to no prevail there. But he is putting that mental pressure on the Portuguese, is the Turkish driver. And I think it's only going to be a matter of time before the two of them come to blows, and it's going to give Voxbacchus even more space to operate with Jerry R driving out in a rather peaceful P4 in a no man's land, not really gaining on the guys in P2, P3 until they fight, and not having to worry about Lone Racer behind doing the dodge. To be fair, as we're looking at him right now, he's doing a very good job staying in P5 and simply putting in the laps, having got past the Peugeot RCZ at Hylis, who's now in P6 and being chased by Luke, who's down in P7 in the Porsche 911. As we see there that Jenkster, I think, got it all sorts of wrong coming into turn 11 in P9. Let's find out what happened to the Welshman there. It's all over the back of his subordinate, so we won't hop away just yet. But Jenkster right now in P9 chasing after the German ahead of it, or sorry, the American ahead of him. But as we ride on board with Jenkster on the hood cam here, you can see that he's just not closing up enough as they come into the corner. But you can see who has, hold on a second, what on earth has happened there between Luke and, well, what it is, Hylis. Was there a move on for P6? I think there was. Let's find out what exactly happened. So coming out of the chicane, coming out of turn 13, then Luke just had a huge overspeed versus Hylis, and Luke went for the move. Cides tried to get the cutback through the chicane, but it was to no avail. Luke got it planted. A nice move from the Polish driver there for P6. The Peugeot RCZ of Cides going a little bit backwards right now as we see them all breaking into turn 1 on lap number 3, and Luke goes very deep, and it's a 2-for-1 special. Can Insubordinate follow through with Cides? There's a contact, and Luke sliding across the apex of turn 2, and I think there he just simply got a little bit too aggressive going into the corner versus Insubordinate and needed to give it up, as we see Jenkster's now trying to battle his way through, and the Polish driver is finding himself all out of position as Jenkster gets alongside him, and Luke has to get the dirt off his tyres, having cut across the dirt at turn 2's apex, and Jenkster now up into P8 as Luke tries to go for the move back on him, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. The Welshman's too savvy for that, and behind them Remwesh down in P10, where it's just gone from good to bad to worse for the Ferrari driver in this race. It just has not worked out as Spinky Bilton is all over his 6 in the battle for P10. It is not a good day to be a Ferrari fan, much like the whole of the 2020 F1 season. But enough of looking into the past and looking forward. We can see that Voxbacchus is still 2.8 seconds ahead of the battle for P2. Vitor Knight in P2 ahead of Zanaisbal. Zanaisbal half a second down. And behind them, Jerry R driver starting to close up a little bit. But Lone Racer right now not getting into the mix for that potential P2 battle as he goes wide out of turn 12. Then he's got to be very careful. But the stability of that dodge giving him the ability just to drive through the gravel. As meanwhile in the battle for P6. Hold on a second. What has happened here to Luke, who's dropped all the way down to P9? What's happened to our Polish driver in the Porsche? Well, he's gone wrong somewhere. He must have gone wrong much earlier on because he has lost out. And Remwesh, meanwhile, in P10 has dropped to P11. What is Spinky Bilton getting the run on him out of the Schumacher S? So we're not sure what happened to Luke. It sounds as though he's probably run wide out of one of the corners in Sector 2, and that's cost him all the time. But nobody going into the pits yet. Oh, we've got our first pit stop. I literally say that, and then somebody decides to do it. Well, bar my biscuit, it's Insubordinate. The American racing under the German flag goes into the pits here. And remember, it's a 20-second loss for a tyre change. It's a 15 to 14 second loss if you don't take on a fresh pair of tyres, and I think Insubordinate flinching and being the one first to flinch will be triggering off a wave of pit stops in the near future, as we are now on lap number 4. He's pitted on lap number 3, of course, and he'll be coming out the pit shortly at the back of the field. And as he comes out the pits, we look further back and we can see that the field has spaced out a little bit, albeit not too much. But Hylistides in P6 right now, going all sideways through turn 3 and coming into 4-5, coming out the Mercedes arena. And I think that Peugeot is struggling a little bit for grip as he makes his way down towards turn number 6. He hasn't got any major issues with his tyre wear right now. I think he's just not having a good time of running the car. Instead, making his way down towards turn 7 and turn 8, just up ahead, he's got Jenkster fast closing behind him. And as we look back from Hylistides here in the Peugeot RCZ, whose last lap was a 1:59.8, 2.5 seconds down on our fastest lap so far, set by a race leader, we can see that Jenkster is sizing up the Peugeot, the Porsche is sizing up the Pugmobile, and I think it's going to be a matter of time before he does try and go for a move on his fellow countrymen. But as they make their way up through the Schumacher S and up towards turn number 11 for the 4th time of asking, we look back and see that Remwesh has fallen well behind Spinky Bultong now, and Insubordinate meanwhile has got past Tamer, and I think Tamer as well may have gone for a pit stop. Yes, he has. So that was the other driver we did see come into the pits, albeit it was off camera, but we saw it on our map screen. So Tamer has also pitted from last and come back out in last, unfortunately, at this time. But of course, anything can happen towards the end of the race, so never say never, including up front. Vitor Knight still holding off Zanaismail, and Zanaismail 6 tenths down, and you could see that both drivers really pushing it to their utmost, as Vitor Knight right now is immediately putting the car in the centre of the circuit. He does not want Zanaismail to benefit from the slipstream, or if he's going to, he'll have to come off the racing line to do it. It's going to cost Vitor a little bit of time, all this manoeuvring, but Zanaismail says, I'm not worried about that, I'm just going to pit in laps, as he picks up a 1-second penalty for cutting the apex into turn 1. Now that is very rare we see that, but Zanaismail making a very, very silly mistake there, because that's going to cost him the run on Vitor Knight and put him back into the clutches of Jerry R Driver, as Jerry R Driver goes incredibly wide out of turn 4-5. And well, you've got to keep in mind that Jerry R Driver, he keeps doing that as well. He's going to put a lot of dirt on the tyres, and Lone Racer might be getting into the mix. But there is a big gap between our top 5. It's 11 seconds between P5 and P6, with Jenkster having got past Hylistides into turn 1 by the sounds of things. We didn't get to see that on camera, unfortunately. But everybody space it out a little bit now, folks, as the strategy element is definitely going to come into play. Although I say that, you can see that Zanaismail going very deep on the brakes into turn 8 and not making it work, but he is getting extremely impatient now. I think he realises with that 1-second penalty, he's got to get past Vitor Knight and cost him some time before he burns that penalty, because once he's burnt the penalty, he'll drop behind Vitor Knight, but he won't want Vitor being able to get close to back, as he'd rather take the position from him early on. As they make their way up towards turn number 12, you can see Zanaismail started to burn little bits of the penalty as he lets Vitor Knight back through, but he should be burning the penalty here. This is the designated penalty zone as he comes out of turn 12, but he's not burning it. So I think there's going to be a stern talking to come the end of tonight's proceedings for Zanaismail, because, well, a number of tries will be expected him to burn it, but of course he's not. But moving away from what's happening and any rule infringements, of course, we can see that Jerry R Driver in P4 doing everything he needs to right now to stay in that battle for P2 potentially, as we can see that both Vitor Knight and Zanaismail are both into the pit, and we are getting a confirmation from our race director here. Pies is intervening, demanding that Zanaismail burns that penalty, because it is getting on the minds of other drivers, or has the potential to. But our race leader right now, going on to lap 6, Vox Backers, he's done everything perfectly so far. He's got nothing to complain about. He's just got to keep bringing that car around the circuit and size up his pit stop when it's the right time to do so. As we see the Peugeot of Hylistides helps into the pits as well, and the pit crew are waiting to receive the machine, and that promotes an Lone Racer, of course, with the pit stop song going up into P3 right now. But the problem with Lone Racer is, of course, that he will have to take a pit stop at some point, but he's been doing a very good job, it should be noted, of protecting those tyres in that Dodge Viper, so I think he will not be going for a change of tyres when he does pits. I think he can get away with not taking the tyre change. And Jenkster in P4 right now, well, it has been a very mixed night, and he goes wide out of turn 3 and he immediately tries to correct it, but that's going to cost him time. And look who's come out the pits behind him. Vitor Knight will not have wanted to see this, and you do have to wonder whether Jenkster's going to try and hold Vitor up as much as possible in order to give his teammate a guaranteed race win, or as much of a guarantee as possible, because if he can write the check and prevent Vitor Knight from sending his own, well, that would be fantastic for the Welsh team, where the two Porsche drivers would be able to at least celebrate one win tonight. But we will wait and find out, as Zanaismail is behind him, and we're now with that 2/10 of a second penalty, which he'll be burning most likely into the braking zones before he gets to the designated penalty zone. Luke, meanwhile, in P7, charging after the guys up ahead, but of course, having recently pitted, we can see that he's pitted, and we are getting some random stranger join our lobby, but you know what, it doesn't matter, all's fair in love and lobby wars, as we can see that Bacchus making his way up towards the chicane. Now, will our race leader pit this lap? We will wait and find out. Is he going to come into the pits? Is he going to react to our other race leaders? No, he is not. He's going to keep going, and to be fair, with a 6.5 second gap, he can afford to keep going right now. He is in a comfort zone versus Jerry R. Driver and Lone Racer. Meanwhile, we can see that Jenkster and Vitor Knight are going to come to blows very shortly, and Vitor, I think, is going to get through into the chicane here, or is he? As Jenkster is the stronger of the two on the brakes, the Porsche being quite strong on the brakes onto flat tarmac, and you can see that Jenkster doing a very good job of simply staying ahead right now, and that's all the Welsh driver needs to do versus Vitor Knight to help his teammate out. He's just got to stay ahead of him as they make their way onto lap number 7, as they charge across, well, lap number 6 according to our timing screens there, but I swear that's lap number 7, folks. I must be losing my marbles. Yes, it is definitely lap number 7. As they come down towards turn 1 once again, Vitor Knight unable to find a way through. As we see, Luke has fallen off the back of Zanaismal, and behind him in subordinate is making his way up through the field. Having done that early pit stop at the end of lap number 3, the American driver doing a very good job of charging after that top 5, and I think a top 5 could be on the cards for him. Hyder C-Days, meanwhile, having dropped behind insubordinate with his own pit stop. I think the Peugeot driver will try and follow through the Atenza driver, but he's a little far back to capitalise on any immediate overtakes. The Spinky Bouton finds himself in a battle with Renwesh, and Renwesh goes to the inside into turn 1, but he's not quite alongside to force Spinky Bouton to have to concede the space, and I think the combination of the grip available to the Subaru plus also the capabilities of Spinky Bouton will be enough to prevent the Ferrari from behind from getting through. But of course we will find out shortly as we see Spinky goes very deep through 3 and Renwish tries to capitalise by getting the perfect racing line, and I think he's got the momentum here. There's going to be a move, but will it be enough as he's got himself alongside and Spinky tries to shut the door, and it's a very, very close attempt at shutting the door and forcing Renwish to the outside there. And to be fair, I think Renwish gave as much space to the inside for Spinky as possible, and I think Spinky now knows that the curtains are pulling up and Renwish is going to be getting through soon, but how long will it be? We will wait and find out as Renwish goes for the deep run, and he goes way too deep, but he does snap it back, and he's going to get a huge run out of turn 8. Now he's going to try and find a way through it. It's going to be surely up into turn, well, he's going to go for it into the Schumacher S, or is he after what happened earlier? He's not going to go for it into the Schumacher S. Instead, he's going to wait until a little bit later. But meanwhile, up front, we can see that Jenkster and Vitor Knight still battling for P4, and Jenkster literally throwing the kitchen sink at Vitor Knight on his worn tyres to hold off the Portuguese, and I think the Portuguese has finally found a way to get very close to the back of the Porsche, and I do not think, unless he's got a trick up his sleeve, Jenkster's going to be able to hold off Vitor Knight this time. As they charge down towards turn number 1 on lap number 8, then Vitor Knight on the inside, but Jenkster going as late as possible on the brakes, and Vitor Knight squeezes his way for a little bit of contact there on the side panel of Jenkster on his door, but I think Vitor Knight's finally got it done, and I can't foresee that Porsche 911 getting back through, but I think the damage has been done, and Vitor Knight has lost a huge amount of time in battling with Jenkster. He's lost the best part of 15 seconds to P3. Lone Racer 14.5 seconds up the road right now, and that just goes to show you, if Lone Racer was to pit and not put on a fresh set of tyres, well, you can imagine that what would happen would be that Lone Racer would essentially come out side by side alongside Vitor Knight. But meanwhile, up front, Jerry R. driver will be aware of what's going on behind him, surely, and Vox Bacchus as well. Our P1 and P2 drivers in a world of their own, along with our P3 driver, and I think they'll all be happy at the fact that by not fighting and choosing to pit as late as possible, they're simply going to come out ahead of the majority of the field, as Jenkster is literally trying to hold everybody up as best as he can. Of course, racing fairly, it's not as though he's causing any incidents or racing unfairly, folks, but he's doing what he can for the team, as the Nisval's all over the back of him. That Aston Martin has got so much leg room going down into the Schumacher S and up through it, but you can see that the Nisval just can't find a way through because the brakes on Jenkster's Porsche are just so strong, as we hear confirmation that Vox Bacchus is coming into the pits on the race lead, as is Jerry R. driver, but staying with our battle for P5 right now. I think it's going to be the case that we've got the Aston Martin coming through, And as our race leaders are pitting, it's going to be the case that Jenkster goes to the outside this time. I think he realises he's done everything, but he does it on the brakes again. Jenkster's so confident on those brakes versus that Aston Martin, but he finally seeds it into the pits. He goes with the team and he comes into the pits. So it'll be one Porsche in, one Porsche out as he's going to be coming in. And Lone Racer is now your race leader. Well, who would have thought it? On his debut tonight, leading a lap of a GTSRL race, the Dodge driver doing a fantastic job of just staying clear of trouble in race number 3, and he's going to be rewarded for it so long as he can keep it together for just a little bit longer. But Bacchus, who's come out the pits, and it should be noticed Bacchus has put on a fresh set of tyres. He has come out, to give you an idea of how much that fighting has cost everyone, he has come out 5 seconds clear of Vitor Knight, who has just come out behind Jerry R. Driver once everything's fixed. And obviously Jerry R. Driver has been the one to come out more recently from the pits. And did Jerry R. Driver go for a fresh set of tyres? No, he did not. So Vitor Knight has had to push like mad to get to this point, and Vitor Knight is now trying to hunt down Jerry R. Driver, what with only 2 laps to go. And of course, the Lone Racer will have to pit at the end of this lap, otherwise he will concede and pick up a penalty as a result of not pitting. But Zanai Ismail will be going down towards turn 8 and thinking to himself, if only he had worked out better tonight, because he's too far back right now to get involved in the fight for P3. But we'll wait and find out, of course, because this is effectively the fight for P2 we're looking at once Lone Racer pits, or at least we suspect that's going to be how it plays out. But we note that really right now, as the gravel gets thrown across the circuit coming out the Schumacher S by Jerry R. Driver there, that Lone Racer has done a very, very good job, and he is on for great points tonight at the end of race number 3. Vitor Knight is still trying to find a way past Jerry R. Driver, and I just don't think he's going to have it right away. What of the fact they're both in the same machine, and it means they haven't really got any overall strengths they can utilise against one another. It will come down to the drivers. And as Zanai Ismail just watches on, 1.6 seconds the gap now, so he is getting closer. He's pulled half a second out. Lone Racer is now into the pits, folks, as Vitor Knight has gone very deep at the chicane, and that means that Zanai Ismail is all over the back of his main rival once again. I think Jerry R. Driver will be grateful for this breather as Zanai Ismail gets to the back of Vitor Knight. We hop to the onboard here, and we're looking from Zanai Ismail's car right now as they go on to the final lap. And where will Lone Racer come out in all of this? Will he have changed tyres? He's definitely changed tyres, because he has not come out amongst these guys. And I think he's done enough as we see Zanai Ismail goes for it very late on the brakes. And, well, you can see that Vitor Knight tried to turn in, but he had a face full of Aston Martin on his right-hand side. And Lone Racer has come out only 5 seconds down this. So if the two take one another out or have a major kerfuffle, it could be the case that Lone Racer could jump onto the podium. But Zanai Ismail has got himself up into P3. He's done a very good job of being late on the brakes there. And now it's a case of, can he hold on to it and can he chase after Jerry R. Driver, who on wounded tyres is trying to make it to the end, as we see somebody else coming out the pits. And Remresh going for the move on Heides Sides into turn 1. It was a little scrappy, but I think he's got it for P8, as Sides won't have a way of coming back, and Spinky Biltong and Luke have just come out the pits in P10 and P11 respectively. Well, my goodness, Remresh is fighting all the way to the end, and no matter what happens, you can't get this guy's spirits down. He has got the fight in him. But meanwhile, up front, we can hear that Jerry R. Driver is being heavily harassed by Zanai Ismail as they come out of turn 8 and up towards the Schumacher S's. They are charging all the way up towards turn number 11 right now, and Jerry R. Driver getting a good run out there. And hold on a second, what is happening? Zanai Ismail has got it wrong. He went out onto the gravel, and as a result, Vitor Knight is back up into P3. And who can snatch P2 off a Jerry R. Driver, or is he going to hold on to it to the very end? But Zanai Ismail making a rare mistake, but one guy who hasn't made a mistake as he comes to the chicane for the final time. It has been a flawless race from the Welshman all the way through, from start to finish in race number 3. Congratulations must go to this man right here. You couldn't put a foot wrong. It is Vox Bacchus who brings home his race win of the night in race number 3, 8.3 seconds ahead of Jerry R. Driver, who's held on to P2. What a great drive by the Dutchman, and he's held off Vitor Knight, who comes home in P3, rounded off the podium. Zanai Ismail will be ruining what could have been today, coming home in P4, but he'll still be happy with a good string of results. And Lone Racer, how about that in the Dodge, rounding off a top 5 position in race 3 by simply just staying out of trouble in the Dodge. Nice work by the British driver there, and insubordinate at the rear of your camera shot, the American-German coming across the line here to P6. Well done for the Atenza driver. And in the battle for P7 in the end, I think Jenkster's going to have it. Oh, no, it's Redwish. Redwish literally crosses the line and pips Jenkster to the finish. Jenkster couldn't hold on in the end. Hylis Cides in P9 in the Peugeot. Spinky Bilton picks up the final top 10 position. Luke 666111 in P11. And last but not least for our drivers, unfortunately not able to get away from the bottom step of the grid at the end of race number 3. Pardon me. But at least he picked up some good points in the earlier races. It is the Egyptian racing under the Saudi Arabian flag of Tamer 2010 as he comes across the line to complete our final division race of the evening. Congratulations to all of our drivers, but of course, a special congratulations to Vox Bacchus from the United Kingdom. What a brilliant race to end the evening. I mean, you just couldn't ask for anything better, in all honesty. We have had tonight a whole string of crazy results. And there's your final standings for race 3, subject to any stewards' inquiries. Vox Bacchus bringing it home in the end, 8.5 seconds clear of Jerry R. Driver and Vitor Knight rounding off the podium. Zanai Ismail finishing P4 and Lone Racer coming home in P5. And the fastest lap going to our race winner on the final lap, a 157.072. Well, you couldn't ask for a more perfect race than that. Leading pretty much every lap, minus the lap when he pitted because the Lone Racer stayed out. Vox Bacchus picking up a great race in the end to end the proceedings. And I get the feeling we are going to see a major rivalry develop between our top 4. Bacchus, our driver, Vitor Knight and Zanai Ismail, because they were all over one another throughout all the races tonight. And Bacchus being the silent one out of the 4 of them, simply picking up the results at the cost of everybody else. And it definitely worked out for the British driver. Zanai Ismail, on the other hand, starting off very strong, but he's got a lot to work on. He'll be feeling most likely as he goes into round number 2 next week. And now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, it is going to be time for King of the Karts. And 2 seconds, folks. We're just taking a very quick breather. What an evening of racing, in all honesty, folks. And I think really my highlight has got to be the absolute carnage of race 2. And the fact we had the field literally turned upside down and it turned into a huge recovery race for so many drivers. I think everyone's been given a little bit of extra time just to cool down before we get underway with King of the Karts. Glad to hear that, Zoom 377. I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it. And it was good to see that your man who you're rooting for, Vox, won. I'm really happy to hear that, dude. But we're just waiting right now. There's the King of the Karts. It is flipped over. But my driver of the day has got to be Vox Bacchus. And to put it simply, folks, it was going to be Lone Racer. It was close between the 2 of them. But the reason why it's Vox Bacchus, because that shows you sometimes you don't need to be the guy involved in all the fighting in order to get a solid result. And that's exactly what Vox Bacchus did in all 3 races. He just simply stayed out of trouble. He just simply kept the car nice and clear of everything and capitalised on the misfortunes and difficulties of others. And that final race there was just some brilliant driving. Just kept it together all the way through. And we have a request that I need to come P3 in King of the Karts tonight after I think P8 in the King of the Karts on Monday. I regret to inform people, by the way, that tomorrow night I will not be able to cast EU Division 2, the rescheduled EU Division 2 Round 1, because I'll be participating in the Ace Lift Design Endurance Championship, as per most Thursdays. I am currently trying to source another commentator for EU Division 2. Unfortunately, I haven't had much success. We are working on it, though, as best as we can. If we're able to find someone, I'll let you know as soon as possible. But in the meantime, it may be that EU Division 2 occurs behind closed doors. But the upside is I will be around for all 3 EDU divisions again next week, assuming they all occur on their expected dates. Here we go then with King of the Karts. Really bad start. The karting carnage commences. Oh. It's only 1 lap tonight as well, so got to get a move on. Not sure what that was about. Whoa, hello. Oh, somebody was just drifting sideways over the apex of the hairpin there. Who was that? 'Cause that was hilarious to see. Oh. Oh, we've been given a little bit of a punt by Bill. Got to try and close Bill down. We haven't got the legs. We haven't got the legs on the straight. It's not quite a P3. It's a P4 though. We'll take a P4. It's an improvement. Oh, dearie me. But no, I will have a... I'll drop Night View a message to see if he's up for it tomorrow. I've been trying to get some other commentators in, but just nobody's available or able to do it at the moment. So I will get in touch with Night View. And we'll see what we're able to do. There's your results for King of the Karts then. We'll take that P4 with pride. Alrighty, folks. Well, we're just going to save that replay. But that is the conclusion of EU Division 1's... EU Division 1. I've got the wrong numbers in my head now. EU Division 3's Round 1 at the Nürburgring GP circuit. What a load of racing tonight. And it's promising in terms of what's to come in EU Division 3 next time out. Now, before you go, you're probably wondering, okay, so what's going to happen in the near future? Well, tomorrow, we've got EU Division 2, but it won't be myself casting. Again, I'll give you the update on who's casting that if we're able to source someone in the meantime and who you can watch to tune into that. Otherwise, next week, we move on to round number 2, which will be at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, where all the Group 3 machines will be going to war in Spain rather than in Germany, and they'll be doing their utmost to progress up through the standings. Of course, we're going to get a lot of action, and will we see a change in the car that's picked for the circuit? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. But until then, I have been Paul Walsh, or TX141, or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Be sure, if you haven't already, to subscribe to this Twitch channel for future GTSRL streams and other GT Sport and Sim Racing related streams. But, as always, stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and until next time, have a good night, and remember, most importantly, to stay on track. Good night.